And we're live on time. This is very exciting. I hope I have a voice left by the time we're done. If you're watching this after, I'll find a way to get it up on the YouTube channel or keep it around here on Instagram. This is going to be a bit of a marathon. It's going to be about 4 o'clock to about 3 hours. Thereabouts, and change as we go along. So wish me luck. La 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 la. It's World Gin Day after all. That's water, by the way. Excuse me. And wait, we'll get some people going and then we'll dive in. And we've got a whole bunch of special guests lined up throughout the program, which I'll go and tell you about in just a minute. And we're going to explore and celebrate all things gin. Because someone had the great idea of naming today World Gin Day, and we get to do it first. So, anyway, Philip Jones, Martini Whisperer here. Welcome to my home. And it's 4 o'clock Canberra time. And so whenever you're seeing this, it's going to be a different time zone. So this has been a bit interesting and challenging to wrangle in terms of time zone. We're going to go to New Zealand, different parts of Australia, different time zones of Australia. We almost went to Italy. And we're going to also go to the UK as well. And meet some terrific people along the way and things like that. So it's really exciting, and we do live in the golden age of gin. I'm sure you agree. If you follow me, obviously you're here, or maybe you're joining from another channel, or you find this clip somewhere else, again on YouTube. It's been an interesting journey. I've been tracking the current craze since the 90s, really, where it evolved really out of nowhere for a long time. It was just your classic standard labels we know and love out of the UK, for example. And then really a few things kind of changed in the late 90s. Different movements at different times for different reasons. Again, now somehow the UK with brands like Hendrix really kind of broke the mold of what contemporary gin could be. In America, you had brands like Aviation, Brooklyn, Koval, St. George, others. That really kind of came on the back of this new wave craft movement in many ways. And so then it got replicated here down under and that evolved in what we call now contemporary gin or new Western style, depending who you talk to, where they are unconstrained about what the gin expression can be. There's no rules or regulations in the new world anyway of what gin is. EU, pretty sure there's some regulations saying how much juniper or must have juniper in that. But beyond that, it's very much a case of you can do what you will. But the general consensus is it's got to have a juniper berry. I was going to have some, but more out. But the classic fruit of the juniper berry, and that's been interesting. And they've got a movement, just a parallel movement to this craft gin movement. Can I call that? It's more an industry now, of course. Whereupon you've got Associated Crafts Gin Day Welcome, number 1. Thanks for coming. We're just getting warmed up here and getting my voice warmed up because I'm going to be doing this for a few hours today. And I'm going to have someone joining us in about 27 minutes from New Zealand. So do please stick around for that. So friends, welcome. Let's get this going properly. So let's set the scene, shall we? How big is this industry? I think the craft movement, how in the 90s and the 2000s, laws were changed, regulations were changed, and basically pretty much around the world, even though you had countries traditionally who made gin, like Italy, for example, make exceptional gins, and some of the recipes go back to the mid-1800s, like Occitan and Silvacato and people like that. And then and countries from Greece, other, you name it, Spain, of course. But then in the UK again, America, New Zealand, Australia, other places. Now it's all around the world, pretty much. Bunker Hill, thanks for joining. Talking about gin. Welcome to World Gin Day, everybody. So yes, it's been a really exciting, dynamic moment. And so let's put some scale, reliable scale, on what we're talking about. So global gin sales, this is last year, calendar year, about 24 billion. And they estimate 26 billion this year, global sales value. I'm going to say that's US dollars. There are something like 5,500 to 7,000 brands of gin around the world. They keep coming, and in Australia I estimate, what's on my list, about 700 or so of it. We'll come back to that. Australian sales, we're talking round about anywhere between $200 to $250 million of retail sales, of which about 200 million is retail. But of all that, that's all gin sales, generally speaking. But all of the gin sold in Australia, for example, only about 15% more or less is Aussie gin. And collectively in Oz, we drink about 2 million litres. Well, bought 2 million litres, that's probably more accurately. Good evening, Reform, thanks for coming in. So what's going to happen this afternoon and to early evening is every half hour, someone's going to join us. And the cab coming up at 6:30, so in about 25 minutes, Andy from Ireland, a stunning distillery in New Zealand, will be joining us. Then we're going to jump across to South Australia at 5 o'clock this time, my time, so an hour from now. We're going to meet Stuart from Little Juniper Distilling. He's got a fantastic method. I love his gin. I always have, I'm not just saying that. And this is, I should put up front, there's no ad here. There's no payment. There's no product placement. They're not paid to be part of any of this. I've just sort of reached out. There's a lot of gin makers out there, including some on the call today. I can't have everybody on the call, so I got a little sample and he came back to me and said, love to be part of it. So just so you know, there's no check in the mail for me for any of this. Just for fun. So yes, Little Juniper out of South Australia. And then at 5:30 this time, we're going down to the beautiful part of New South Wales on the south coast, north of Eden. Going to meet Gavin. They did some really fantastic stuff. Then we're going to go to Lord Howe Island. That's right, at 6 o'clock. Then, very exciting, 6:30 this time, we'll meet Sean, the head distiller, master distiller of Plymouth Distillery, one of the most famous distilleries in the world. I think he's transferred here. So, Sean, just talking about you. So, thank you very much for tuning in, and we're excited to talking to you in a little while about all the amazing things and the incredible things that Plymouth Gin's got such a heritage that certainly one of my personal favourites. And finally, at 7 o'clock, we'll be talking to Eureka. They've renamed, so they're out of Sydney, inner city Sydney. So we'll get a nice spectrum of makers. We'll get behind the scenes a little bit with them. And so, yes. So while we're talking brands, and so we're going to be joined by Andy from New Zealand in a little while. And her gin's just beautiful, beautiful stuff. I'm a really big fan of Kiwi gins in general. So yes, you've got this moment that's been happening whereupon the new style, contemporary gin, or the new Western style, there's a couple of different categories people use, has been given a lot of latitude in terms of expression. So in gin, I'll talk about single whiskey expressions and things like that. It's a bit similar to gin. Distillers love it because they can do so much with it. But here's the basics, right? Let's do gin 101 for a minute. What goes into gin? You're going to have your base alcohol. And some will make it and some will buy it in, and that's okay too. It's either a grain-based spirit, usually wheat, or you can have a grape-based or wine-based, which adds a very interesting viscosity to the spirit. And also cane, sugar cane. So there's makers in Queensland, for example, who naturally enough, when they go sugar cane up there, can use that spirit as well. It's very subtle, but you can notice the difference what you get your palate around it. So yes, the type of alcohol, great water. Water's really important. The botanicals, as we said before at the top of the call, Juniper's the key, must be there somewhere, shape or form. But beyond that, pretty much the sky's the limit. And certainly here in Australia, everyone's been using different types of native botanicals, some more successfully than others. The same in New Zealand, and I guess we can talk to about that when she jumps on the call. The type of still that's there, just the actual production process itself. And Stuart's from Little Juniper, when he comes along, we're going to talk about him. He uses a vacuum distilling process as opposed to a more traditional heat source. So that's very, very interesting. So there's one-shot method, multi-shot method. They might make, some distilleries will make all their distilleries go in a row. How to put that? One run will be Juniper, for example. Another run will be, so these are separate batches in the still. Coriander or dried citrus or, you name it. Then they'll have a ratio. They've worked out the formula, so 5% of this and 20% of that and 10% of this. And then they'll blend it together to make the final batch at scale. And you can do it that, or you can do it in such a way that all the botanicals are in there. In the still, imagine you're making a stock and they're kind of going in maybe a series of baskets, and depending what they are, some more delicate than others, some are higher up in the still, some are actually in the base with the spirit itself heated up. Those flavours are imparted to the spirit. It rises in the still, it condenses. Often there's a filtration method. And then it could be chilled, non-chilled. Come back to technical. And sorry, someone tried to call me just now. And yeah, if you're just joining us, welcome. Straight happy Gin Day, World Gin Day, everybody. Including Wild Bromley, fabulous. And snowy mountains down there, not nice and snowy down there. Excuse the pun. Yes, Ali, that's right. Yeah. So we've got coming up soon, Island Gin from New Zealand. We've got Little Juniper coming from Adelaide at 5 o'clock. We've got North of Eden Gin joining us from beautiful south coast of New South Wales. Lord Howe Island Distillery, fantastic Plymouth Gin from the distillery in Plymouth, which is really exciting. And finishing off at 7 o'clock, Eureka from Sydney, every half hour. And in the meantime, you've got Little on me to choose from. So yes, so you've got your botanicals, you've got your making process, you've got your water. Alcohol level is also a good consideration. Namely, most gins are 42% if you look on the label. And I'm going to go into a bit later. Sorry, someone's trying to text me before. When people call you, and I tell people I'm doing this live, and that's all part of fun of live TV, folks. It's all well. Anyway, so I hope you can stick around, and I will aim to record this as well. It's a 3-hour marathon, so I don't know if Instagram's going to let me do that. If it does, I'll save it, I'll chop it up and upload it again, so you can't stay for the whole thing now. But I'd love to hear from you guys. You can do a comment there. What do you like about gin, or what's your favourite gin? I would love to know that, so write or comment and let us know as we go along, please. And if you've got a question maybe along the way, please do. So yes, so the alcohol, is it 42, is it higher? You've maybe heard of Navy strength gin. We'll come back to that because some of these guys who we're going to meet this afternoon, early evening, make that style as well. So that's very much a case of higher alcohol, 57%. I've got this great book. We're going to do some gin facts as we go along the way, and I've got a dozen books all around me here. This is Gin Dictionary by a fellow called David T. Smith, and he talks about Navy strength gin and vacuum distillation. So it's great. You've got all the different botanicals in it. Okay, good question. So Australian High Honey Huntry said, speaking of botanicals, can you tell the difference between juniper from different locations, Alpine, coastal, European, Australian? Yes, absolutely. Great question. And most distillers I know will swear by the juniper that they use. Again, Stuart from Little Juniper, as the name suggests, very fixated on his juniper, and he's got a great sauce he gets to, and I'll all the excitement around that. So others may have fresh juniper. So in Italy, for example, there's a brand called Silvacata or Aquitan. They'll harvest it wild in the mountains, because that's Silvacata, it's on Sardinia, actually on the water. Amazing gin. It's actually pure, their gin, one of their gins, Ginu, is actually pure juniper. No other botanicals. It's that beautiful and that's fresh and that piney brightness. Bearing in mind, most of the juniper, most gins, at least in around southern Australia, are usually dry. But there are now more and more people, and Gavin from North of Eden, who's going to be on this conversation later on at 5:30. Yes, he's working with a local juniper grower in that neck of the woods too, and that really informs his gins as well. So absolutely, yes. And they'll swear by whether it's Macedonian or Greek or wherever, whatever. And also New Zealand now looking at plantations, and there are a couple of commercial plantations now starting, well, just being planted literally the last year or two here in Australia as well. So, yeah, great question, thank you. Ali the Kids asks, never knew about oyster shell and Taylor Smith honey gin. Yes. So, big fans of Never Never. They've gone great places. They're really very much about the juniper, as you would know. They've got the triple juniper, they've got Juniper Freak, then their regular one. So if you want to know what a classic London dry style, what they call Juniper Forward, so again, it's almost like a piney, minty, not sweet at all. Try one of those and you'll see what I mean. And they make killer martinis. And Taylor Smith honey gin, yeah, down in Tassie. Yeah, nice packaging too, nice smoke. So, yes, so if you've got a favourite gin, let us know. I'll be happy to share out. I should mention also, I was saying before about something like $26 billion retail value, I think that's US dollars, sales around the world in 2025. And there are maybe 7,000 gin brands around the world. That's not counting individual labels, mind. That's just the brands around the world. No sign of it slowing down, as far as I can tell. For all the reasons I've just said above, you can be so, as a distiller, you can be so creative with it, right? So, having said that, the top brands, I'm just sort of research hole off the internet. This is an AI-free zone, I should also mention. So yes, the top selling brands in 2024, according to industry research, in order: Beefeater, Tanqueray, Bombay Sapphire, Hendrix, Roku, Fords, The Botanist, Monkey 47, Citadel at France, and Boatyard. So probably no surprises there. But as I said, what I like to do, and that's what some people on the chat today, these amazing distillers we're about to meet, is to tell their stories, because the big guys can look after themselves, if you know what I mean. So next time you go to a shop, try and buy a local brand or a new brand or a cult brand, because often they're small business people. Australian High Honey was I used to buy a bottle of gin from every country I had to travel. Darn, that's hard work. And if I prefer Aussie gins, I love the rhubarb from Scotland. And oh yes, I know that one from Singapore to the Yorkwood gin from Singapore. This is the thing. Saying before some of you joined us, saying how this new wave of gins happened. Prohibition. Hey guys, from Australia, had the pleasure of doing some things with them a few years back for their World Gin Day, and they've just won a bunch of awards. So congratulations, guys, at Prohibition. What's the same? Yes. So Hendrick's out of Scotland, right? So we know Scottish whiskey, and out of some of nowhere, seeming like this black bottle appeared with cucumbers and roses, and really broke the mold open and gave people the idea that there are other things you could do with gin than the classic kind of style. So we're in their debt in many ways. So yeah, Scotland makes some great stuff for sure. So in about 14 minutes, we're going to jump over to New Zealand, which is kind of really cool. So let me give you another gin fact while we're waiting. So yeah, so the big brands sort of dominate, and in the case of Australian gins, and obviously some from New Zealand gins and other brands, different countries have different. Also, there's another thing to think about gin, namely how to put this, I guess the drinking culture, how they're consumed. Right? So if you're in Spain, they talk a lot about the copa, the gin and tonic. There's gigantic glasses of the whole fruit salad full of garnishes. I have a sneaking suspicion it's just another way to sell more gin and more tonic and giving you these huge glasses. But it's hot. And there's some really, really nice gins that come out of Spain. Philippines apparently drink the most per capita gin, as far as I know. But I've not been there, so I couldn't comment. What else we got going on? Or the UK, but even now, so I was coming full circle, I was saying about this evolution of the classic brands and then this new wave, and then people responding about these more traditional labels, again out of the UK in particular, have responded in turn with their own innovation. So you take Beefeater, for example, good old-fashioned Beefeater. Time and place for it. The 24 I really enjoy. Is that you go to their museum, they've got these really terrific museum releases that are really innovative. So happy days for us. We're in the golden age of gin, friends, absolutely. So let's move on. So yes, in my book. And I've also got, this is a great book, Speaking Gin. We're going to be dipping this as we go along. And if you're still a happy World Gin Day to you, it's been a good one for you. We're going to have New Zealand join us any minute now. And we're going to go around, as I said, to Island Gin, Little Juniper, every half hour, north of Eden, Lord Howe Island, Plymouth Gin. Master Distiller is going to join us, Sean, and Eureka out of Sydney. So interesting line up, and we've got good questions for them in advance. So this Gin, Glorious Gin by Olivia Williams, this is about a couple of years ago now. Worth a read. It reads a bit like a novel. It's basically how gin got developed in UK, but names like Gordon's and Tanqueray's, they were real people, real families. And so it goes into how they kind of got going, but she writes so well, quoting Dickens and all sorts of people like that. It's wonderful time. But she was saying how how the laws got changed, and we had that really bad reputation of, especially in the 17th century, 1700s. I'm just trying to find a little quote here. They were saying 1 in 4 buildings at one point in London had a still of some shape or form. Yep. I think part of it was taxation, and the laws got changed anyway. They tried to regulate it. So yes, I think it was also a simple point that you wouldn't want to drink the water. Right, people back then, we're talking 1720s, 1730s, they drank beer and watered down wine, everybody, and gin of various nasty qualities, because you simply didn't want to drink whatever was in there. So saying in 1751, there were 17,000 private gin shops in the city of London with only 600,000 people. And in the area of Holborn, a small part of London, there was over 7,000 in that area. Then that did not include all the inns, taverns, alehouses, and private homes where gin was available. And there was few cubes. They were potentially open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until 1839, when the first Sunday closing laws were enacted. And all of that laxity meant that in the 1720s, around 2.5 million gallons of gin were produced annually in the capital. How did anybody get anything done? I wonder. Okay, so if you have, again, if you've got a favourite gin, let us know. Of botanicals, Lord Howe Island, we're going to be talking to you a bit later. So yeah, we're excited to see what you guys have been up to and really interesting journey. So yes, so gin is definitely having a moment, and I see it no sign of slowing down. As you know, you've probably been aware on my website, martinywhisper.com. There's a list of all the Australian distillers, for example, and I'm got to add another couple. And yes, some have stepped away from the business, and that's just natural evolution. Yeah, we've got time. Now, if you've got a favourite gin, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're a distiller, it's quite okay for you to nominate one of your own. I think I'm just doing two things at once. Yeah, multitasking. One of the distillers who's going to join us to send me a message, so I'm going to just talk myself now. Okay. Now, let's talk about again basics of what gin is. So it comes out of the still. The distiller will cut it. So the pure alcohols come out of the still. The distiller will cut it or dilute it with the water. Again, that's why the quality of water is really, really important. And the decision point being, is it 42, 40? Is it going to be Navy strength? And again, come back to Navy strength gin. Very much about that's, it's not just a high alcohol just to be drunker quicker. It goes back to the Royal Navy days, where partly, and there's a few stories around this, but basically they want to make sure what they were getting in the barrel. Remember, this is 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, long for any sort of stainless steel. So the gin would rock up on the dock, and the guy's going, well, we want to make sure we've got proper gin and hasn't been diluted, under the contract or whatever. And so the trick was they get some gunpowder, pour this gin onto it. If it's high enough alcohol, when you light a match, boom, up you go. And I remember on Instagram, I think it was last year, some Kiwi distillers whose name escapes me, they launched a Navy strength gin. And there's a funny video, they poured it, they did that and blew something up in a field. No one got hurt. But the point of Navy strength gin, again, is not just boozy here. It's more importantly, the higher the alcohol, the more flavours from the botanical can be carried. So the richer the flavour, the spicier the flavour. So it's very much about that. And it can be very hard to pull off, because if you're not careful, then, if you're smelling a Navy strength gin, you don't want smear of volatility on the nose at all. You want a really closely woven. So I was saying before, someone talked about favourite gins around the world. If you go to Scandinavia, who make consistently brilliant gins, we couldn't get one lined up in time for this little chat, unfortunately, another time perhaps. Sensational gins, but the way they're built are different, because their drinking culture is less cocktails and more about having that gin neat. A bit like the Dutch with the Juniper, they're the old style of gin, right? So if you go to Amsterdam and after a gin, you'll get probably a little shot glass, and it's down like that. Much more herbaceous and medicinal. So richer viscosity, botanicals are really kind of woven into the gin as well, because they're meant to be drunk and stand alone, right? So different countries have different approaches to, whilst here in Australia, again, New Zealand or UK, cocktails and gin and tonics and all that jazz. So there's consideration, I guess, for people designing gins or making gins, how they're going to be consumed. And obviously, if you go to their websites or what, they'll have some recommendations around that. But for me, you've got to really know the gin in and of itself before you can start mixing around with it. Sorry, just someone to text me. I've got multi-screens here too. All right, so 6 minutes until we meet Island Gin. And later on, I encourage you to follow these people and their negative words. Let's pull her website up. Andy. And so it looks a beautiful part of the world. Actually on an island, that's like a conservation island, Great Barrier Island. And she's been there for quite some time. And we're talking about different botanicals. And so I've had the pleasure several years ago of being one of the international judges for the New Zealand Spirit Awards. I can't this year, fortunately. But it's a hard one, if you're not familiar with them, to get your head around the New Zealand botanicals, like Manuka. And the other sort of, native terms that we have in Australia, myrtles and so forth. And they are generally very, very good across the board. I've always been very impressed by New Zealand gins, and there's a lot of finesse to them across, as a matter of course. And I think part of that is that they often are designing them, they're a small market, but they think internationally. So they're thinking about how they can export and things like that. So how this is going to work is, kids, is I'm just going to jump on the call in about 4 minutes or so, and I'll let her in, and then I've got some questions in advance and things like that. So again, happy World Gin Day, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. We'll still go for a few hours. So in a minute, we're going to have Andy from Island Gin, then, like I said, Little Juniper, Norfolk Eden, Lord Howe Island, Plymouth, the UK at 6:30, and we'll finish up with Eureka at 7, and in between I'll share some gin facts with you. All right, so getting back to this book, the Gin Dictionary. So come back to aged gin. So I was saying before about Plymouth Gin and the Navy Strength Gin rather, and on the docks, and because the gin would arrive in barrels. So the notion of the clear gin we know now, probably back in the day, was maybe not so common. So if you know a barrel-aged gin, and that's been sitting usually, it's been made in a normal way, but then transferred into a barrel, it could be an old sherry cask or a bourbon cask or something like that. They're not trying to make whiskey out of it. Clearly you've got botanicals in the spirit, unlike a new make in a whiskey, and therefore the flavours come from the barrels. For the most part, a barrel-aged gin is designed differently again. So it'd be hard to pull off well. I've got some over here, we can talk about them in a minute after our first chat. So basically you take the gin, it goes into a barrel, and there might be wood chips, and so they talk about it in this dictionary. Again, ex-bourbon might add some spicy sweetness to it, things like that, and maybe just 3 months, could be 6 months, usually not much longer than that. And what you lend, therefore, is the colour and some of that extra complexity of flavour lended from the barrel. The advantage, I guess, is it's more interesting, and it's almost like a light whiskey, so you can just put on ice or neat and just drink it as is. Maybe in a certain cocktail you could do with. But I was going to say, and so the barrel-aged gin is probably one of the earlier reflections of probably what gin used to taste like pre-modern times. Something to think about. Other makers, I know Big Henry in Tasmania, they use a Solera method. You may have to look it up. So it's basically a whole range of barrels, and obviously each barrel is going to be a little bit different, both in terms of size and type of wood and the way it's built. And so a Solera method, they use it for other things, is to move the spirit across a range of barrels over time to get an even flavour profile across the board. And of course, you're going to get some variation around that. So barrel-aged gin, it's a really interesting expression. And one to look out for. And so if you don't like your whiskey, but you like your gin, but you want to kind of go to the dark side, then that's something you may want to think about. Now, I've noticed Island Gin has joined us. So, Andy, when you're ready, there should be a little prompt there for you. And so how this works is it'll prompt to join the chat. You should be able to press that, or if you follow the instructions I sent you, we'll let you in and we can start our conversation whenever you're ready, Andy. In the meantime, so let me give you by way of background. So, I was saying just before everybody that the gins from New Zealand, I think universally, I'll say this because I've had a lot to do with them, one from another, just consistently really, really interesting. Now let's see if this is going to work. Request to join, there she is. So everybody say hi to Andy Ross. The magic of. You there, Andy? I'm going to send you an invite to my end just to see if that was going to work. And you should just pop up on the screen any second now. Thanks, Ali. Let me try this again. Just send you an invite, Andy. You should be able to accept that and join the call. We've done this before a million times, it's fine. All right. I'm accepting that. Did you get that, Andy? Bear with me, folks. You know how things easy to go. Saying you're unable to join. Why would that be? I'm going to try it one more time. We'll get it working. Don't worry, friends. Just into another invite. So yes, there's probably about 70 odd makers now in New Zealand, one form or another. Again, there's a directory on my site linking back to respective. Some are very tiny, like you were talking literally garage operations and things like that. So yeah, it's really interesting So that some of one was in Vickers Gin. They read literally out of their garage kind of thing, and some are like Scapegrace, big, equivalent of their four pillars kind of stuff. Dr. Venus is joining us too, so our friends are here. I'm just organising. Andy, did you try that again? Just accepting. Just trying to get Andy on the call. We'll get there. She's on an island, off an island, so just that. If you can hear me, she's unable to join. What would that be, I wonder? Bear with me, Andy. I can see you. We knew it was always going to happen, but that's okay. We'll get there.
Hello.
Voilà. Hello, Kia ora.
Kia ora. How are you?
Doing
How
good.
are you?
I'm fabulous. Lovely to see you. Love to meet you.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. I got stuck on the bridge in Auckland in between tastings, but I'm here.
You've done very well. Thank you, and thanks for making the time.
That's all right.
Funny, I was in Auckland with my wife in about February. I'll tell a quick story, and she loves public transport, and she hopped on a bus to go to a certain point, and it was one of those ones that ended up over. Just kept going and going. I don't know where she ended up. For 40 minutes.
It's just there's one bridge, and unfortunately I was on the North Shore and getting onto the other side, and I got stuck. But here we are, so it's good. Thank you for having us.
You're my pleasure. Now, I'm just going to send a text to someone who keeps pestering me with a call. I was saying before you joined, I told everybody I'm doing this, and people trying to call me. I'm going, don't call me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. Please don't call me. All right. Okay, hopefully that does the trick. Welcome. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. I mentioned in passing you seem to be in a very beautiful part of the world where your distillery is based.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so we're on Great Barrier Island, which is 4.5 hours by barge off the coast of Auckland. It's the sixth largest island in New Zealand. There's only 1,000 people that live there, and there are it's very, very remote. So we're on the beach side. It's all off grid, completely solar powered. Our distillery is 100% solar powered. So it's a pretty beautiful part of the world. It's in the Hauraki Gulf. And we're probably one of the most remote distilleries in the world, at least in the Southern Hemisphere.
So you thought you give yourself a few challenges then?
There's a lot of challenges. So to give an example, King's birthday weekend, the two barges were due to sail just before that weekend, and they were both cancelled because we had huge storms coming through. It's called Great Barrier Island because it is the barrier to New Zealand. So we get the first weather, and that's okay. So we just have to prepare for it. So we're used to running 4 to 6 months ahead with all our scheduling and our stock and our bottles and things like that. So it's just something we live with. But you sort of get used to it.
That's amazing. I think most distillers have challenges, but there's other levels. So what made you get into this crazy gin business to start with? Like, what attracted you?
Look, I love gin. I've always loved gin, and we've had a place on the island for 22 years. And I was transitioning out of an earlier career, and I thought, well, why can't you make a gin? A world-class gin remotely on an island with solar power. So it was kind of a bit of a challenge, a personal challenge. And I've done brands for other people for a long time. And I thought I would really love to make a gin. I started doing lots of research since 2016. And then I thought, well, we got closer to being able to make it on the island. And it's just in New Zealand, you can make your own gin legally for your own use. So anyone in New Zealand can get a 2-litre alembic copper pot still and produce spirit as long as it's for your personal use. So I started with that, and I thought, got to understand gin, how it was made, and thought, okay, let's see how far we can take it. So it's
That's really fascinating. I didn't realise that. Just on that, then, because we have excise here from a retail perspective, as you know.
yes.
How's it treated in New Zealand? Like, it makes it challenging from an economic point of view for you guys?
Look, I mean, we're like any distillery in the world, and we pay our excise every month. Um, I'm not sure how it works when you're doing it for personal use, but for us, I mean,
Yeah, I
obviously
mean,
we've
for,
been
I mean
commercial
for
distillery.
commercial, yeah, commercial production. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
absolutely, it's high. We're not as high as Australia, but we are pretty high.
Mm.
We don't get any help with excise either, like you do in Australia for distilleries. So yeah, it's high. We pay it every month. Um, yeah, so it's a legal requirement, obviously, and it's very litigious here. We've got a lot of customs. It took us 3 years to get a customs license on the island. 3 years to develop the bottle. So nothing's easy here, but we definitely are playing in the same space that most distillers do in the world with excise is a necessary evil,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I was just saying before you joined, you may have heard my comment about my experience in New Zealand gin. It's generally excellent. Like the
Um,
quality it has a baseline across the board. Is a lot of finesse to the product. And am I right in thinking that part of that is just the way you think about your making? Obviously, you want to create your own expression,
yep.
but also you're thinking, well, how do we make something that's really good, that's going to find a market for your product?
Yeah, I think it's really important for the terroir, and so obviously we're very remote, and part of our story is that we use locally sourced honey. But I guess New Zealand, has come to the party, I guess, a little bit later than most of the world with gin. And we're kind of likening it to, New Zealand wine has always been great on the world stage. And so now gin. We started with the DSA Distilled Spirits Aotearoa in 2018 in its foundation year. And I guess we all looked at it as, an interesting parallel to the wine industry in New Zealand. And now gin is taking on its own personality. So I think because we're so remote and everyone has quite a particular personality due to the geographical nature of where we are in New Zealand, I think it's a very interesting um, spirit,
Mm.
a very interesting country to produce this spirit. Um, no two gins anywhere in the world are the same, but especially in New Zealand as well. There's a greater emphasis on the terroir, I think, I would say. Does that make
It
sense?
does, and I mean your botanicals are so distinctive, you know. So let's break down your gin. So what botanicals have got in your gin?
So we use Eastern Macedonian
Hmm.
juniper, New Zealand coriander, and the third ingredient, the most important for us, is Manuka bush honey, which is on the island just down the road from us with a fantastic apiarist. It's like very biodynamic farm. He looks after his bees very well. He calls them his girls. He really does look after them exceptionally well. A little bit of lemon myrtle, which is a nod to our Australian heritage, and also red ginger. So those two ingredients we get from the Outback chef in Australia
Right,
who
interesting.
works with Aboriginal communities. So it's a little bit of a nod to our background, a little bit of local tarragon, um, and that's it. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I've had it, and for anybody who doesn't know, you've got to see the bottles to believe them. They are really exquisite. You don't want to throw them; you want to keep them because they're recycled glass, yeah, aren't they? Your bottles?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So the development, I designed it with a friend of mine, Tanya, in Melbourne. We're both ex-graphic designers. So the bottle is developed on a Kinner shell. Kinner is an endemic shell in New Zealand. It's made it was 50% recycled New Zealand glass. It's now 70% recycled New Zealand glass.
Fantastic. Yeah.
It's made by Visi in Auckland, in Penrose. There's only one glass factory in the whole of the country. They do Heineken and Tuatara, which is a New Zealand beer. So that what we wanted to do was create a uniquely New Zealand gin bottle that resonated with the country, and that's what the Kinner inspired thing is. And we wanted people to really think about when they're buying a glass vessel we wanted them to keep it. So we wanted it to be a beautiful decorative object. It's a subtle branding. I mean, a Kinner, it's almost looks like its own beautiful little, almost like a little perfume bottle with that people can take once the labels are off. We highly encourage people to fill them with water and put them in the fridge. We've got a wood and a glass stopper. The other use we've got now is we've got some beautiful stainless steel pourers, and that converts the bottle after the gin has been consumed into an olive oil decanter.
Fabulous.
Trying to do that. Balsamic vinegar decanter. We've got a lovely woman who's a very good consumer of ours. She's Mary Lou in Wanaka. she sent us back a bottle filled with her own sweet chili jam. So we're just really trying to, we're very sustainable on the
Mm.
island. It's 60% Department of Conservation protected. So we're very hot on making it as sustainable as possible in every way. So the bottle's a big part of that
I
story.
imagine. That's fantastic. Now, speaking of the botanicals, it must be variables. You're talking about at the start the variables just living on the island, managing
Yes.
that. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how do you as a distiller try and aim at vaguely? People when I talk about craft spirits, I say to people, well, don't expect every bottle to be identical. Batch
Yes.
number one's going to be for
Yes.
because it's a small batch for a reason. So,
Yeah.
how do you go about managing those variables?
Well, I mean, the juniper is pretty consistent. The New Zealand coriander is very consistent. The honey can have it's a Manuka bush honey, so the bush component, the floral nature changes a little bit from season to season. But what we do is we've got a 220 litre copper pot still, so we're running it every day. And what we do is in order to maintain consistency, there will be a slight tweak to every batch, but we're combining 3 runs or 3 days of distilling into one 300 litre
Mm-hmm.
tank that we let sit, so it melds together. So it kind of ameliorates together over those 3 days. So from a consistency point of view, there's not a great change. And I guess when we do 3 runs over 3 days and then put them together that sit in a tank for 2 weeks, then when we finally cut it with our beautiful rainwater, it is relatively consistent from
Mm-hmm.
batch to batch, month to month. There doesn't seem to be that greater disparity between that.
That's interesting. No, it makes sense. And from memory, I mean, this I was saying before about the different types of base spirit, but also how important water is, and people underestimate
Yes.
the value in that. And from memory, your gin's really just really so soft on the palate.
It's
Yeah.
very soft. I mean, we're 5 hours off any mainland, so the rainwater that comes across the clouds is very very pure. Um, so, and also we actually we have a whey-based ethanol, which is a New Zealand product.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, mineral spirit in Australia for pillars, for example, would use a wheat-based spirit. Some New Zealand distillers use sugar-based spirit. I mean, and we're proud of using a byproduct for New Zealand. It doesn't translate in any other way apart from a beautiful, I think that adds to the soft palate
Mhm.
that we have on our gin, a delicate structure. So we actually really love it. I have tried it. I did, when we were doing our experiments, we did use manildra and with the honey and things like that. But we just thought, let's just use what is available in the country that we're distilling in. And actually, I think it's really a great, beautiful palette for us to work with.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I've had the ones that use Tasmania, for example, who are much more pronounced with their whey, but that's very much part of their flavour profile as well. It's almost like a milky sweetness to it,
Yes,
and it works very well for what it is. But yours is so much more subtle; you would have even picked it. But it's there now. Now I think of it, I can see why that is the way it is. Yeah.
yes,
Are you?
yeah.
Do you tinker like some of the distillers I know? They're part mad scientists, part engineer, whatever. Are you a tinkerer? Have you got a whole on in your laboratory kind of thing, working on different things?
Yes, we love that. I actually love to do that because we do an original and an AV, but because we've got such great producers on the island, they'll call me and say, "Look, we've got a damson plum tree, or we've got a lot of feijoas, which is a very Kiwi thing." So if they've got fruit that's very fresh, rather than it go to waste and fallen fruit, they'll come to me, I'll take it in, and we'll do short runs. So we'll do like maybe 120 bottles. Every few months, we're doing a new seasonal thing. Partly for me, because I do love being a bit of a mad scientist and I love creating something unique. So it is a very much a part of who we are. And that's part of the sustainability as well. So there are orange trees, fruit trees, macadamia trees on the island. So if that's available to us, I will definitely try and utilize that in a very short run that generally goes to our mailing list only. We don't tend to
I was going to ask.
sell it
Yeah,
off the mainline
mm,
off the mainland. Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
was going to say. So, what's your current range now for people who don't know? It's but if I can get it via your website, or even visit ideally. But
yeah.
what's your current lineup?
Well, you'll have to come and visit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I'd love to.
we've got our core range is our original, which is 43.2%, which we just won Best London Dry in New Zealand last month at the World Drinks Awards.
Great.
Um, Navy Strength, which is 57%. They're our core ones. Feijoa is a seasonal thing that we like to try and offer, which is a 26% ABV, which is more like it's not a sticky kind of option, but it's on the rocks, so that's kind of that kind of thing. We do a little bit of a citrus tangelo, which will come out probably October. Um, yeah, and it just depends. We've done peach before. We've done a bit of a peach nectar thing as well before. Um, so it really depends on what's available on the island. But the core range is original and
Hmm.
navy, but we will always probably now have Feijoa. And we've also got a great friend who does some great things over Easter. So we recently did a spiced gin, which has got a lot of citrus peel, a lot of vanilla, cinnamon. We
Yeah.
just experimented with that. So that's definitely a thing that's on the rocks as well.
That's really nice. Take me back to your navy strength then, please, in terms of, I was chatting before about something as a style. I mean, it's got its heritage, its roots back in, Royal Navy, blah, 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 and how the high alcohol, as I understand it, carries richer flavours, richer, more spice. It's not about the alcohol ABV per se, but what enables you to do it. Have I got that right? Like, what's your approach to making your navy?
Well, the navy is it's obviously 57%.
Mm.
The navy is our recipe. It's our original recipe. And I know that a lot of, well, not a lot, but some other distillers will do a specifically a different navy. But we were really happy with our original recipe, our original profile. So we've actually stuck with that and have just have cut it to a higher ABV. And it's quite interesting actually, because if people haven't tried they're not gin drinkers and they haven't tried our gin before, and they naturally gravitate to the navy, which has got a more discernible flavour profile. And whiskey drinkers particularly like to have it on the rocks. So we're we're pretty happy with that. I mean, navy is a smaller part of our business. Um, yeah,
But it can be a hard one to pull off, to do well. You need
yeah,
that really good base spirit. You need to help manage that volatility from the spirit really well, I think. So it's a
yes,
nice showcase for the distiller's craft, to my opinion.
mm, yeah, definitely.
Now, a final thing, I thought you should go home safely in your car. It's such a
I'm
trip that we're
sorry I'm in
doing
the
this.
dark. I mean, I was hoping to get to a bar by the time, but we got the bridge is one way in, one way out, and we've been doing tastings all day for World Gin Day. So I'm sorry it's a little bit dark, but
No, 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 home stretch. I also noticed on your site, so everybody needs to know islandgin.com. That's where they can find
yes,
you online.
yes,
And you can stay there in a batch. How do you pronounce that?
a
Batch? Batch?
batch,
Yeah.
a batch, yeah, which is a BACH as opposed to a
Such a
BATCH, a batch of
Kiwi
gin.
thing. Such a Kiwi
It's
thing.
a Kiwi thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had a place on Great Barrier Island for 22 years, and our batch next door which is next door to us, is on Medlands Beach, which is a surf beach, and it's on Airbnb, and that's where I first started to distill my batch of gin, and rigged up on a 12-volt system in the kitchen to the as you do with a number 8 wire kind of situation in New Zealand. So Philip, I started doing that in my kitchen like that, and it's very highly specced, and it's 80 steps to the beach,
Oh,
and
that's
then
really
our
good.
distillery is separate down the road. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
people can rent it, and you must come over. We'd love to have you over here and
I would
show
love to.
us.
Thank you. I would love to. I think I was actually quite close there. I didn't have any day passes because we were with my wife on our anniversary trip, and we took a cruise out to the Ida that used to be, I think, a quarantine centre or a Salvation Army sort of ran it for alcohol rehabilitation.
Oh,
It's quite nice to visit
I don't
it.
like.
And the name of the name escapes me now, but we must have gone past you guys because we took the ferry, a boat out from Auckland Harbour out. It was about an
Oh,
hour and a bit out.
oh, wow,
We
wow.
were, so
Okay, wow,
I was in the
wow.
neighbourhood, but I wasn't allowed to because they need distilleries when I was there, just so you know. All right, you've been fantastic. So good to spend time with you, Andy. Thanks for
Great.
making the time. Yeah,
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to welcoming you over when you can get over this part of the
me too.
world.
All right,
Happy
get home
World Gin
safe.
Day.
Happy World Gin Day,
Okay.
everybody. Say bye. Say
Thank
bye
you.
to Andy. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Just jump out and I'll let it go.
Okay.
Wow. So that's Andy Ross, Madam Distiller from Island Gin. Amazing part of the world, sounds like. And islandgin.com. And also follow him on Instagram. What a great story. Amazing. I love this. This is why we're doing what we're doing. Now, coming up next is Stuart Mackenzie, who I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times, but not for a few years now, from South Australia. He's got a great story to tell. We'll get you on the call just a minute, sir. Get yourself lined up. I can see you there already, so give us 5 minutes and I'll get you on the call there, Stuart. So I might change the scenery just to keep things interesting for you, and now people will stop calling me and texting me. Come over here. Well, welcome to the bar, and you can see here I've been doing a bit of a spring clean of the bar because I do that every year. Lovely people like distillers send me, I'm just going to put a note here, lovely gins from around the world to review and taste and sample. So this gives me an opportunity to taste and enjoy. Just welcome. We're talking about the burgeoning Juniper trade in Australia, well, industry, thereabouts. So it's very apt. Nice to happy World Gin Day to you. So here's, it's a little bit paltry, my stock at the minute, because I've been giving it away, because at some point I'm probably, well, I can't drink it all and it's just sitting there, so why not share it, right? Like we're doing today. And it gives me a chance to talk about some funny little releases here, gins around the world here. So I've got gin from Germany, and we talked about barrel-aged gin before, and navy strength gin, and of course the London dry style. So coming back to our story at the start of this conversation, in about 1720s, 1730s, there was a gin sort of called Old Tom. It's like a semi-sweet, and the reason it was semi-sweet because basically it was really bad, and they had to kind of cover the flavours with sugar. So you can still buy it. Hayman's make it, a couple of people make it, and it's can be used in cocktails. It's sweet to our palate. It's not sickly sweet, but it's, you know. But then as the technology got better, the sort of stills they were starting to make in England at the time, the base spirit was getting a bit more pure, things like that. They were able to get rid of that and then create a style called London Dry, which basically means not adding anything. So once you make the gin with all the botanicals, you're not adding cordial or colour or sugar or anything, hence the dry. So it started in London, but if you see London Dry, it's this type of gin. It doesn't mean it's come from London, obviously. And we're jumping ahead a couple of centuries, and now you've got, so this is from Cologne, Germany. I got the full range from the lovely people at Cologne Spirits, and as the name suggests, 0% alcohol. And say what you will about 0% anything. I know the wine industry have been trying to crack that nut for some time. So they've sent me their range, and there's a pink version, and so what you want about pink gins. Love them or hate them, they're there. They're not going away anyway. But yes, so this is out of Cologne. They're actually marketing it. This is done a contract. This is one of the few kind of 0% alcohol gins that I've had that actually taste like gin because of that Juniper flavour. Actually tastes like gin. It's a weird sensation though because you're drinking waiting for something to happen and nothing happens. Nothing. So it's that. We're going to be in Plymouth for a little while. I've kept this bottle, and still we'll get you on the call just a minute. It's a bit rude. You can make it out for yourself. This came out of during good old lockdown COVID time when everything was not what it should be. So not your typical navy strength gin. This lands at 60% ABV, right? And old Young's distillery in Swan Valley, south of Perth, Western Australia. They make terrific stuff. And I won't read the whole thing out, but I've kept it. So a dark, dark time before the nation. What was the distillery to do? It's on the label. The crew resolved to make a gin that summoned the mood of the people with a simple 2-word title. So they made this. And boy, if it is a revolution and we need to make Molotov cocktails, I'm saving that for that. It's a doozy. Prohibition, who were on before from South Australia, they make a monster. Maybe plus it's 68 APD. Ouch. It's great, but you were warned, right? And also, just as a random comment, speaking of gins around the world, there's no Americans on the call today. They're a bit busy right now, but I had the pleasure of going to New Mexico several years ago, Santa Fe, next to be precise, and made sure I visited their distillery. And you'll imagine it's a beautiful, beautiful city in the desert, 10,000 feet up, stunningly beautiful landscape around it. And so they foraged their botanicals in the forests and the desert around Santa Fe. Pinon and all sorts of amazing things there, and juniper, wild juniper as well. But because they're quite high up, they get a lot of, in their whiskey, a lot of evaporation, so they actually have to keep it in a humidifier to stop the whiskey evaporating at enormous rates. But the gins are really singular, and it takes me back there to the desert and the rest of it. So I've kept that bottle of Western Dry Gin, Willer's, Santa Fe Spirits. So lots of power to it. And before we get Stewardy on a sec, saying before barrel aged gin, we keep coming back to that, but this is a barrel aged gin from the guys in South Australia, 36 short. And so back in the day, your gin probably looked like this before, it was stored in something else, not barrels. So let me introduce you to Little Juniper. So Stuart, he's going to join us through now. What's really great about, I'm really excited to have him on board. He's got a very different method of making his gins, and he's very particular about his Juniper, as the name of the distillery suggests. So what I'm going to do, is add you. You'll see an invite coming your way, and we'll get you on. So based in South Australia, and they've recently got a new cellar door, which we can talk about. So Stuart, you should get an invite on your screen there, and if you want to jump on, just accept that, and we'll be in business. So friends, if you're just tuning in, welcome to World Gin Day. Every half hour I've got a distiller from around the world, and here he is, the man himself.
Hey Philip, how are you?
Good to see you. How are you?
Good. It's been a while.
A little while. You've been busy.
Very.
I've been following you from afar. There we go. So, how long have you been making gin now?
Yeah, so we started, 5 years ago, so just prior to COVID. Started with a rotary evaporator, so we're doing vacuum distillation. And then the German company that we'd purchased that equipment from supplied us with a commercial unit, which was like having a Ferrari parked in your distillery. Very expensive.
I remember we last time I saw you, that was just starting to happen for you.
So that we didn't have much luck with that. They found out that alcohol is vacuum distillation alcohol. The size of it, very sensitive. The equipment was very sensitive to alcohol, so we persevered for 2 years, spent a lot of time, didn't have any luck, but then we've got an American company that makes a bigger unit, and the way it works, it's a bit different. So they usually use it for hemp and CBD oil. So we're looking at, once we've got our cellar door up and there's some money in the bank again, we'll look at investing into something like that. Looked at doing a traditional copper still as well that's vacuum distilled, but the engineering behind that's very expensive and it can be dangerous as well when you're talking about vacuum and high pressures. So at the moment, our core range of gins are done with a traditional copper still, but then we've just invested in a commercial printer. So we can print our own labels, because the cost of everything, if you're looking at producing your own labels, then you're looking at $8 a bottle if you want to do anything under 1,000 for what we do, the quality of labels. So we can now make our own. So the future, not too soon, we'll be creating little short batch things with vacuum distillation, and I'll be able to do my Breaking Bad thing again and experiment, play around, and be able to release it affordably for people. So we'll probably do that for our email subscribers and followers first. And
Well, that's exciting. Yeah. That's exciting. So I was saying, just by way of introduction, that Juniper, and I remember our early conversations when we met, as I said last time, several years ago, well, just how important Juniper is to you, or for every distiller, but particularly for you, and your sources of it are quite important.
Yeah, we use, well, it's kind of a worst kept secret now, but we use Bulgarian juniper berry. So we're certified organic. Most of the juniper berry that's used around the world comes from Hungary and other places, and it's not certified organic. So you tend to find the way it's grown, the altitude, temperature, things like that, there's a hell of a lot more flavour. So we're also, as much as I do like to experiment now, signature gin is by no means a London dry anymore. We start off with a London dry base and build on that. So everything we do kind of has, I believe gin should be gin. So we start off with a traditional recipe and then we sort of expand out from that. So the signature gin, I think our juniper berry percentage in that is around 63%. So
Wow.
it's quite juniper forward.
Wow.
Having 21 botanicals in there, there are other botanicals that complement that. So it's not a juniper hit in the face. We've got a lot of other flavours in there that work with that to create a really bold gin. So all of our gins, I suppose we stick to the traditional European laws that it should be over. I think it's 51% of your botanical makeup should be berry. So we try to stick to that as much as we can.
When you're distillation, are you doing all the those botanicals at once, or are you treating them separately and then?
No, we do it all at once. We had during COVID, I think I distilled about 300 botanicals and then played with recipes and blended them, and you do get a good result, but not as good as you do when you're actually, you have them all in the still together, because you get those flavors that marry together. A lot of distilleries will create what they call a concentrate, so they'll create a really rich gin like ours, and then they'll water that down with ethanol before they water it down with water to get it to drinking ABV. We don't do that either, because as soon as you add that ethanol, you're breaking all those bonds apart. So what comes out of the still, we let it sit for about a month, and then we slowly water it down over a couple of weeks with purified spring water that we use, and then you get a nice pure flavour. So a lot of the comments in our gin are, though, even though you've got a 42% gin, you can still drink it neat. It's nice and smooth, and that's one of the reasons we, it does cost a lot more. The production times are slower, but that's what you're paying for. That's a quality product. So.
It's a very elegant gin. I'm not saying that because you're here. I've sort of always been a big fan of it, because it's one of those Australian gins, particularly where some go on their big bold flavours, especially on a botanical, for example, and you kind of love or you hate that style. You know what I mean? And I just like how classic yours is, and hence it's also so versatile as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When we launched, we took it into some bars and they tried it and they said, "Oh, this is delicious, but it's not going to work for us. We need a cocktail gin." And I said, "Well, try a cocktail. It's not going to work." And a couple of them tried it and they just went, "Wow, this is like a chameleon. You've got all of these different flavors that pop up depending on how you use it." And it's still, people ask me what my favorite product is that we make, and it's like asking you what your favorite child is. I don't have a favorite child, but I do love the signature gin for that exact reason. In winter, I'll drink it neat. You can drink it with soda, tonic. It's great. It's great with a ruby red grapefruit or a cranberry juice, and fantastic in cocktails. It's we've even used it in tequila-based cocktails. It works really well.
Interesting. Because I'm looking at your website now. So if everybody just tuning in, littlejuniper.com.au is where you need to go. And so you've got your rare plum gin now. You've got a Christmas pudding. Looks kind of fun. It's a fun label.
So actually, this morning the Christmas pudding's an interesting one. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
That one's a 2-year-old barrel aged. So it takes 3 years to make a bottle of that one. So it's short. Long story short, it's I've got Scottish and Irish ancestry. We believe, we should have checked with my grandmother before she passed away, but we believe the Christmas pudding recipe is Scottish more than Irish. So I inherited it, came to me on 3 pages, pretty much like parchment paper in old cursive. I couldn't read half of it. Had to get my father to help decipher a few lines. I said I couldn't figure out what these things were. And he goes, "Oh, that's threepence and pennies." So a shilling, sorry. So it's something that each generation, someone inherits it, and then they're not allowed to share it with anyone. No one's allowed to help them make the pudding. It's been 15 years since my mum passed away. I still haven't made the pudding, but turned it into a gin. So she used to add brandy to the top of the pudding. We didn't want to do that. So I thought pretty much after I'd made it, it was delicious. And I thought, well, this isn't quite right. We need to do something to get that brandy essence in there. So we barrel aged it. So the first year we used a virgin Italian oak barrel, which was delicious. It was still on the hot side. Then the second year we used a Solaris system of 3 barrels. So we start with an ex-American oak, which is a bourbon. Didn't let it sit in there for too long. We didn't want to pick up too much of that bourbon flavour. And then we go into a French oak, which had Australian tawny. And then the final one was a Spanish Pedro Jimenez sherry barrel that we brought over from Spain, which when that arrived, it was like Christmas. There was probably 6 to 8 litres of sherry in the bottom of it, and it's like motor oil. I've kept it. I drink it slowly, and it's absolutely
Oh,
stunning. So
wow.
this year, that was last year's, and then this year, which will be the 2024 release, it's always a year behind, even though it takes 3 years to make. I literally took it out of the barrels this morning. So we finished that in a 4th barrel, which is something a little special. And I thought last year's was good. This year's is incredible. It's just, yeah, I can't wait to bottle it and have people try it.
That sounds fantastic. I'll read my question list, and I had what excites you about gin. I think I'm getting it already from you because because you've been going how many years? Quite a few years now, and your passion's still there, and that creativity, innovation clearly gets you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today. I was distilling, and it's a weekend. I pretty much work 7 days a week, and if I'm not working, I'm always thinking about it. And I think coming from a background of film and TV for 30 years, someone said to me last week, I said, "It's just really different. You've gone from one career to another that are totally different." And I said, to me, they're exactly the same. It's a really creative process. I suppose with the branding and marketing, this was the first thing that I'd ever created for myself. Everything I created for 30 years was for other people.
Right.
Yes, I've done my own work, but commercially. And there's something rewarding about putting something in a bottle. You've created the branding, even the box it goes in to go to a wholesaler or something, you created the branding and that, the website, everything. It just tells a story of who you are, and it's really, I love the creativity on it. And I get easily bored, and maybe I've got ADHD, I don't know, some people would say so. But as soon as I get bored, it's like, right, it's time to step it up and change something. And then the other side of me is probably 50-50 is the business side, which I love as well. So they fight with each other quite a bit, hence the print. The last 5 years, I want to do a vacuum distilled gin, I want to do this and I want to do that, but I can't do it affordably and commercially release a gin for $150. So it's been looking at how to do that affordably, and that printer will help us with that, because we can print off 10 labels or something if we want, and then send it out to fans and whatnot. But yeah,
That's very interesting. I was going to say, I'm going to talk about your cellar door in a minute, but the ecosystem, for folks who don't know, South Australia, middle of Australia, Adelaide, capital city thereof, and it's almost by virtue of its location, almost a self-contained entity in so many ways. And so you go to bars there and all you see is South Australian spirits, which is perfectly fine. It's a very healthy ecosystem of great bars and hotels and things. But you've branched out, it seems to me, that do you see now your market's expanded by virtue of beyond where you're at?
Yeah, Adelaide's a tough market. It's a small city. They do support local, which is great. But I suppose about 6 months ago, I was looking at Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. We started getting interest from those places, and I sort of thought, all right, we'll dip our toe in and see how it goes. And it's like last weekend, we picked up 5 new bars or hotels in Sydney and Brisbane that I'd never even heard of. So it wasn't from any legwork I've done. It's just word of mouth. We branched out into limoncello and coffee liqueurs. We've got some other things coming as well.
Yep.
Won Best Australian Fruit Liqueur, and that's just we haven't even marketed, it's word of mouth. That's selling interstate really well.
That's fantastic.
So it's sort of nice to see, because we constantly get asked, do you sell in Brisbane, do you sell in Sydney, do you sell in Melbourne? It's like, well, no, but we plan to. It's just getting around to it was the hard thing. So while we were waiting for that cellar door, which has been a long time in the making, I sort of planned for this last year and the next 6 months to plan on sales and expand the range. We're in Dan Murphy's here. They're talking about taking the limoncello national, which would be great, because then not only in bars and hotels, but we're in bottle shops, so the public can find us. So yeah, it's been surprising. At sort of, sales are never easy, but it's a lot easier interstate than it is locally, funnily enough. I think it's probably popular as well.
Interesting. That's great to hear, Stuart, because some distillers I talk to, especially in the Sydney market, they find it very hard to break into, because basically if people think about a bar, there's X amount of real estate, X so many bottles you can fit. So if you've got to add one, someone's got to come off, literally,
Yeah, well, we've probably been looking at bars, but also hotels and groups and things like that. So there's a large Sydney hotel group. You're not walking into one of their restaurants.
Right.
$100 on a meal, and they contacted us, and they're stocking 2 or 3 of our products at the moment. They love us. We're getting turnover, which is great. The sales are great, but at the moment we're just strapped for space. So as your sales are going up, so is your your workload. So it's kind of, we're distilling a lot more, bottling, packaging. You know, we've got a warehouse just simply for storage, which is full of boxes and bottles and things like that. So
it's probably a good challenge to have. Speaking of challenges, so you mentioned cellar door. You've got plans to expand so people can find you?
yeah, so we've got property. I think we spoke to the owner about a year and a half ago, and I literally had a call from him this morning. He's like, all right, we'll get started in the next 2 weeks. So that's about half an hour out of the city from Adelaide, so up in Nan. So on your way to Lot 100, there's a little town there. You probably miss it if you blinked. Turn off there. There's another distillery up in the same area as us called Tin Shed Distilling, who's a mate of mine, Ian and Vic. They specialise in whiskey and rum. And then there's a Spanish brewery that's going in next to ours, so we're taking the rest of the rear of the section. So it was an old abattoirs that a small goods company owned years ago. And I think we've got about 2,000 square metres, so we'll have the new distillery, which is probably bigger than most cellar door spaces and distilleries I've been looking at in the past. That's 2 stories, so we're going to take chunk out of the middle, so the still will come up through, because our new still that we've got sitting in a shipping container is too tall. It's sort of nearly 4.5 metres tall.
Wow.
I think the
Cool.
ceiling there we've got to bring up a bit. And then upstairs there'll be a gin school with glass windows where you can look out the distillery and see all the production's happening. We've got capacity for 200 people and another room for events for 100 people. Commercial kitchen, a whole separate area for bottling and packaging. What else am I missing? An outdoor section, a little atrium, little whiskey lounge. So it's quite a quirky building. The owner said he'd had 12 or 13 groups go through and they couldn't figure out what to do with it. I was in there within 5 minutes. From the outside, it looked atrocious. As soon as I walked in, I was just like, oh my God, I can see this and this and this. So,
oh, great.
Yeah,
So you were holding you to any timeline, but do you have what, this time next year, do you think? Or?
I would hope so. If I had $1 for every time someone asked me to do that, I'd never open because I'd be a millionaire by now. But there's been, I suppose, the owner's very busy. He's a commercial engineer and has a lot of developments. So there were a couple of hold-ups in council because where the brewery, us, and a new car park we're putting in to accommodate for all the car parking has gone through council at the same time. So it's been a bit slower than I would have liked, but it's pretty much done now. Once he gets his, button to gear, he's pretty quick. So he's
It's interesting. This is on your question list, Stuart. But the one thing that's occurred to me where talking to people like yourself is that gin's a manifestation of so many things. Isn't it? And you've got it is, how to put this, part of a wider ecosystem of people who make the stills, to people who grow the botanicals, to the Coopers, and now you're talking, you've got a tourism product in the pipeline, as it were, your employer, it's distillers are a catalyst for so many things and so many other industries.
Yeah, I've had my own business before in media and design, but it was small. Whereas this is, I suppose, the fact that I can hire people. I think I've had 12 job applications already, and I keep telling people we're not going to be open for a year. No, I live up in the hills. We've been following for years. If I do a tasting at the bottle shop that's near where the distillery is going to be, I think I had 30 groups of people coming in who were like, I was like, oh, do you want to try a gin? They're like, oh, no, we buy your gin all the time. We're here to see you and ask questions about the distillery. So there's a lot of support.
Great.
We had another property just in the foothills about 2 years ago that fell through, and once that fell through, I had phone calls from all these farmers saying, oh, we've got apples in our orchards that aren't good enough for commercial produce. We're going to drop them into you and see what you can do with them to make brandy or whatever. So there were all these growers that I didn't even know existed that had already planned on coming to visit us when we opened. So we've got the same thing up there. Even with the kitchen, we want to try and use as much as we can that's not just South Australian, but from around that region, Adelaide Hills. I love the fact at the moment, a lot of our products, like our limoncello, things we use in our signature and our plum gins, we use local growers as well. So I was on a farm a couple of weeks ago and he's got a hell of a lot of land and he's looking for what to grow. And I was like, well, have you thought about putting this and this and this in? He's like, well, no, because there wouldn't be much of a call for it. And I said, well, if you put those crops in, we'll make a product for it. So it's being able to support farmers who are struggling as well, because farming's not great at the moment.
No.
Droughts and things, but they've got bores and they've got water. So it's working with growers, working with butchers, things like that I'm looking forward to. Really having something that is South Australian and being quite proud of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You maybe remember I used to be a National Tourism Board judge, and they changed the categories last couple of years to actually have two. It used to be just wineries, cellar doors, and now that the distillery is part of the category as well, which is great to see. So I fully expect you to be having an entry in one day. Get some gongs going, man. But that must give you confidence knowing that you've got that interest in that groundswell and it's raw material you can just pick up and run with. Sounds like. I mean, it's going to be more work for everybody, but what a great position to be in.
Yeah, I just like the fact that, if we're doing well, then someone else is doing well. It's not, we're not sending money overseas. We're keeping the local economy going. And it's, that to me is what, I don't know, is the other side of it, that during COVID, like bars and everything are suffering. And I have no doubt that we'll get in and it's not going to be flying from day one. It'll take a while to build it up and get people through the door. But the thing for me is doing something for community and having people in there, not necessarily drinking, but having events where we can do things for community. I'm part of a lot of business networking groups, and you get together with CEOs, and you're all part of a totally different industry, but you're all going through the same problems. Yes. And some of these people are desperate. Their businesses are on the brink of closure, and you just talk to them, and you come up with a single idea, and it can help them, and they come up with ideas that can help you. So it's about networking with local businesses and local people as well. I'm big on the art scene, so having musicians in there, using that events room to have a gallery and show off, sala exhibitions or any artwork and things like that. It's just, yes, it's a distillery, it's a cellar door, and there's a kitchen there, but it's also, I don't know, it's a way for me to have a premises that allows me to show people what I love and support other people and artists and, like I said, farmers and things like that. That's a
gorgeous vision, and it occurred to me, listening to you about COVID and the isolation that happened through that. And I was, I was talking about this fun little thing James did. I think what we've come on the other side of that is the human need to connect in all sorts of ways, and you just can't get past a physical space and a welcoming space, and we're hardwired for it, right? So.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my personality, but I could go months without seeing anyone. I'm working on my own and get plenty done, but catching up with people and going out to a bar or a restaurant, socializing with people, going to those network events or groups and doing things with other people, it just recharges my batteries. It gives me confidence in people again in life, and no matter what's going wrong in life, there's always good people out there, and it's nice to have a chat. And everything online, it's great technology. I've been working with it for years and I love where it's going, but I also hate where it's going. So it's a tough one. We're even looking at date nights and things like that because people are all online dating and going through horrors and that. And it's like, all right, well, let's do a good old date night and have people there meeting and greeting and
Love it. Well, look, I think that's a really nice note to finish on. Something romantic. Stuart, I know you've had a busy day, so thank you so much for your time today. So friends, Stuart McKenzie, the founder of Little Juniper, littlejuniper.com.au. Go find the good stuff in South Australia. It's been great to see you again, mate. Hope it's not too long before we have a chat again.
Definitely. Have to come down and see us.
I will. All right. Stay well, man. Take care. All the best, mate.
Yes.
All right. So just press the goodbye button and I'll crack on. Voila. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Little Juniper. Yeah, littlejuniper.com.au. Fantastic range and top bloke. And it goes to show, as you were saying, that we're talking about gin today, Happy World Gin Day, and if it's tuned in, we've got different distillers meet on the half hour, an hour. And it's clearly more than a great of a sum of its parts. Yes, what's in a bottle is one thing, but it's a catalyst for so much other things in the other industries like the coopers and the barrel makers and the people who make the stills and the people who grow the botanicals and the marketing and the tourism and all that. It's all kind of comes out of that, which is really fantastic, and that's what excites me as well. So in a minute, we're going to a beautiful part of the south coast of New South Wales, a place called North of Eden. Gavin, the master distiller there, and then I'll create an interest. They did get me along a couple of years ago now to help launch one of their range, and I was the MC at that, which is could have had a lot of local businesses, like the oyster makers, and you've got to imagine a place on the south coast, kind of near Bega, Eden, Narra Woods. Look it up. Anyway, so northofeden.com.au is the website. And there's critters. You must love critters, i.e. Highland cattle and dogs. Beautiful part of the world. And they offer at a gin school as well. So we'll get you on in just a minute, Gavin. Just stay tuned. And while we'll do some more gin facts, shall we? So I'm going to move the dial back here. So keep it interesting for you. Studio crew of one. Years ago, speaking of COVID and those lockdown days, I used to do some live cocktail events, and I'm going to do some virtual martini events in the coming. Because next week, Australian International is World Martini Day. My Christmas and New Year is all tied into one, and I'll be launching a range of virtual martini masterclasses that you can book and get a bunch of friends over virtually. I did one a few months ago for some lovely Americans in Costa Rica. Fantastic time. They had a huge party going on, and we sort of tuned in. I think it was 9 o'clock a.m. Sunday, my time or something, but cocktail hour their time, and we're making espresso martinis virtually. Great fun. So coming back to our gin dictionary, filtration. So I was saying before, you've got the botanicals, paraphrasing vastly, of in the still, the steam arises as the ethanol spirit, the base spirit is picking up all those flavours from those botanicals. Again, as Stuart was saying, sometimes you might do separate runs, sometimes they're all together, just depends on the different styles and how you want to treat those particular botanicals. And after it condenses at the top, the steam and condenses and then comes back down again, there's a filtration period. And in some cases, it's a chilling mechanism. So you imagine, I'll probably do a picture. I can do a picture. Might be able to do this. See if this is going to, here we go. Okay, let's see if you can see that. Okay, so there's the still. And this bit, so let's be still down there. It all rises up here and gets thing as a condenser. And inside that, the cooling pipes of water, which then actually chilling effect, literally a chilling effect, and that kind of strips out some of the oils from the botanicals, and you get a very clear spirit. Some gin makers don't do that, and you'll see on the level non-chilled filtered. Often whiskey they do it this way, or single malts. Some gins, like the Melbourne Gin Company, for example, don't do this. So what you get is that chilling filtration doesn't occur, but what it does is it retains a lot more, as I said, the flavour of the oils. But it can freak you out if you're not used to it. So you get a more luscious flavour profile, again, because the oils and botanicals retained in the spirit. What was I going to say? But if you make a martini, for example, it'll go a bit cloudy, lushy, as the French say, or lushy. And everybody who's just joined us, welcome to World Gin Day. Phil Jones, Martini Whisperer here. On the half hour and the hour, we've got a different distiller to meet. Coming up is Gavin from north of Eden, a beautiful distillery on the south coast of New South Wales. We've just been talking to Stuart, founder of Little Juniper in Adelaide. Prior to that, we were talking to the lovely Andy from Barrier Island off the coast of Auckland in New Zealand, and we're working our way around. So we're going to be talking to Plymouth Gin later on, and we're going to be talking to Lord Howe Island at 6 o'clock, and then finishing up with Eureka Distillery in Sydney at 7. So I'm going to try and record this as best I can, but so try and stick around. I don't think Instagram will let me do a 3-hour recording, and then I'll have a little drink and we'll lie down after that. So let's see if Gavin's around. Let's see if we get you on board, sir. So Gavin, if you're there, let's get you on the call and discover all things about your range. Here he comes now. There's the man himself. Hello. Can you see me? How
are we today?
And to you, happy World Gin Day to you, mate. How's it been for you?
Yeah, not too bad. I just thought that I should make myself a teeny, given that I'm talking to the Whisperer. And,
I like your style. I like your style.
Yeah.
I'm a one-man band here, so I'm saving myself for after this, and I'll have a nice one.
Very good.
You got to earn it before you can enjoy it. Now,
Fair
friends,
enough.
I've been trying to set the scene for you, but you will do it better than I would. Probably set the scene of where you're at and what you look out for your distillery door every day for people.
Right. Well, we're set down here on the far south coast, or the Sapphire Coast of New South Wales. So we're around about 10 kilometres from Bega, just north of Bega. although we're called north of Eden, which means we're actually 56 kilometres north of Eden, which confuses a lot of tourists, I've got to admit. They drive all the way down to Eden to come and see us, and then they work out that they've got to drive back 56 k's just to come and visit. But no, we're on a farm here. We've got some beautiful hairy coos which keep our paddocks down, and they're part of our bushfire protection system. But they're really just family pets, to be quite honest. Got a couple of dogs running around whose job is to welcome anybody that comes out to the distillery.
They do a very
gin.
good job, they do, those two.
They do a good job. They do a good job. They know that if they don't get fed. So that probably keeps them keen. But yeah, no, we're as I said, we're a small distillery down here on the coast. But I suppose our whole ethos is actually about showcasing the region and doing it as sustainably as possible. So
Let's talk about that, because again, you're in a very beautiful part of the world, and you've won all these awards, and I've got to also make very clear this is you're a small operation. As you and your lovely wife and the critters and a couple of staff. You're a classic example of a rural regional distillery in Australia.
We are very much so. We're a tiny little unit, but yeah, well, I think our spirits pack a bit of a punch. They've got a good following around the country, which is great.
You've got bragging rights today, Gavin. So give us some of the awards you've been winning lately.
Oh well, we were named in the top 3 Navy Street gins in the world last year at the IWSC. That was with our Admiral gin. Find your bottle. Here we go.
We've been talking about Navy Strength gin all day, actually.
Here's one I prepared earlier. But all of our gins have medalled at the largest competitions in the world. And the great thing for me is that we consistently medal. It's not just 1 year and we medal, and 1 year we don't. We've never not medalled when we've gone into the largest competitions in the world. And that really, to me, is the feedback that I've been seeking, because it tells me that we're consistent. And I think our customers, the thing that they love about us is the fact that when they buy our gin, if they buy it 2 years apart, it's still the same. And it's still at the same quality, and it still tastes the same.
That's no small achievement. So how do you go, as a distiller, how do you go about managing those variables? Because people don't know, not only your botanicals going to vary, maybe from batch to batch, you've got humidity, temperature, the mood of the still. I'm guessing some days the moon, who knows? How do you land at that consistency, mate?
Well, I suppose the key thing is that the big thing that changes is from season to season. And so from season to season, we've got to modify, like for instance, when we're using citrus. If we've had a dry year, the citrus peel will be really heavy in oil. And so I won't need as much of it to get the same flavour. But in a wet season, then I'll need more because it's got less oils in the skins. So being aware of those things actually helps you modify what you put into the still to actually make sure that you're getting a consistent outcome. I suppose the other part is that if we do make something and we don't think it's quite right, we won't put it in a bottle. We'll actually remake it, because I think that's the commitment people want from us. So, and I think that's like, you should never be afraid of that. As a distiller, you can't know everything. And then when something does happen or it's a little bit different, own up to it and actually go back, redo it, make sure that product is the best product that you can make.
Yeah, that's a great commitment to craft and excellence, truly. And I'm so glad you've been recognised for that, because you're a small producer. I think 400 bottles at a time, thereabouts.
Yeah, that's about right. Each time we run our stills, that's about how many we make at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not a lot, friends. And people have picked the scenario. So if they don't know you from they've heard about you, they've washed up on your fair shore, given the dog a pat, And you got one chance to make a good impression, really, in terms of spirit, aren't you? Really, like it's got to be there in terms of quality.
Yeah, yeah. And look, people love coming out here in particular. One, because we're in a beautiful part of the world, and you can sit on our cellar door garden or sit on our deck and take in the views of Beamunga, which is the local mountain, taking the view of the cows going post, but most importantly, you can sip on quality spirits. Like we've just shut our cellar door for our weekend trade for this time of year because it just gets too quiet in this part of the world. But from October through to the end of June, or to the June long weekend actually, we open up on a Saturday and a Sunday and we have a full bar experience. And, we make world-class cocktails, and that's what we sort of pride ourselves on, but in just such a magical location. We people think I joke, but when it comes to making a martini for somebody, my staff aren't allowed to make one unless they've actually gained a martini license. So to get a martini license, my staff had to actually make me 3 perfect martinis in a row before I let them make one for a
I
customer.
like
But
it.
I think that's important in terms of setting a standard and having a quality experience. So that's just one of the, I suppose, small little quirky things that we do.
No, it gives you small but great, mate. I want to talk about two things while I've got you. I want to talk about your oyster shell gin, because not many people may know about that, and that's really special. And I want to talk about your adventures in Juniper, because there's been a few posts on your Instagram lately. And again, friends, this is Gavin from northofeden.com.au, so find them, follow them, tune in. And we've been talking along today a lot about Juniper, various guises. And so it's quite a new industry here in Australia, the growing of. So do you want to unpack what you're doing with the local growers?
Right. So we're extremely fortunate because I think we are now the only distillery in Australia to have moved their entire gin produce across to Australian grown juniper. Now, we partnered with a grower way back in 2018, lovely lady by the name of Lucy, who's actually planted out a whole lot of juniper trees in the Snowy Monaro region, a place called Bibbulmun. Now, I've got on a big juniper journey in this last number of years. But there's a few facts that I found out about juniper which are important. Like, we'd love to have a much bigger juniper industry in Australia. I think from a sustainability point of view, everybody brings it in from Eastern Europe. That's a lot of miles on a plane
That's right.
or on a ship.
Mm.
So to actually grow juniper, you need 3 very important things. You need altitude, you need snow during the winter, and you need extreme heat during the summer. So one of the things I found was that you can grow juniper just about anywhere. It will grow like a weed, and it will form the cones or berries, as we call it, as people call them, but they're actually a cone. But the thing is that the essential oils that we want for gin don't actually develop fully unless you actually have those 3 conditions.
Right.
And Bibbulmun, which is up near the Snowies, has all of those things. It snowed there a week ago, and during the summer it can get 45 degrees. It can get very hot. So with that, these berries have just been sensational. We had Landline come out and do a story.
I saw that. That was cool. That was great.
Yeah, it was about what Lucy's doing and what we're doing. But we had the juniper actually tested at the University of Tasmania, and they found that it had the essential oil contents, particularly alpha pinene, which is the key ingredient, if you like, or the key flavonoid, was as good, if not better, than any of the junipers from around the world, from the most recognised growing countries. So absolutely stoked about that. And then when we started to move across, so we moved across. It would have been 18 months ago, maybe a little bit more, with our classic, and then with our Admiral gin. And when we did that, we really noticed that backbone of Juniper just lift in the actual product. It's sensational. And
Did you have to
then,
change any of your other botanical profiles as a result, or were you just
no,
happy to let that shine?
no, I was happy to let that shine through, and it hasn't changed the character of the gins. It's just improved that Juniper backbone. So they're a little bit more Juniper forward than what they were, but it's fresher and it's cleaner. And I just think it's such a great improvement. So we actually call it, like the classic when we moved it across, we called it the new classic, just so that people could know that it's slightly different. But
Yeah,
a couple of weeks ago,
go. Sorry, after you. Go on.
I was going to say a couple of weeks ago, we finished the transition. So we've actually had a large enough harvest last year so that we could actually move across all of our products. So super excited.
That's
Super excited.
amazing. It's amazing. It does make you wonder, stepping outside that bit, why it's taking that so long for someone to do that, or the growers. I know I didn't know of her and two others in Australia, and they're both early in they're literally planting, trees now, sort of thing. Well, I think the Kiwis have started it a little while back, and so it goes. Like it's the industry is there, but the rest that bit was catching up. So it's exciting. You're way ahead of the curve, man.
Yeah. Well, look, I suppose the thing is you have to have vision and you have to have commitment if you want to go into this industry. So we just started those discussions back in 2018, and it takes 6-7 years before the trees actually produce a crop.
Right, of course. Yeah.
And so it's a long haul. It's a big investment for a grower. I love what Lucy and Bruce have been doing because they've taken it on as a bit of diversification on their particular farm, but they're so committed to the process. And they're doing the growing, but I've had to learn how to process everything because before I can use the berries, I actually need to dry them out. And that whole process, I've built dehydrators so that I can actually do that. But I've had to learn along the way as well because there's all these nice little bugs that actually want to come in and eat your juniper, I found. So I had to work a way to actually deal with those guys. And then had some issues with mold. I went, oh, well, I can't use any of that stuff with mold. This was sort of earlier on.
Right.
So I've had to change how I actually, one, dehydrate, but two, manage storage so that none of those things happen anymore. So it's been a real learning curve.
Yeah, I can
in that
imagine.
process.
Good question before we move on to the oyster gin. When's the harvest time for the berries?
So
Through your pines.
so it's generally around about March in Australia, and it really depends on what the season's been like. But the interesting thing is it's a bit ironic actually because they actually make honey. That's one of the things they currently produce. But juniper doesn't need a bee to actually pollinate.
Yeah,
They actually have male and female trees, and they actually work on spores being spread by the wind. So that's I suppose the first thing. The second thing is on the plant itself, you actually have 2 years crops. You have this year's and next year's crop on the same bush, and so harvesting it is actually really quite tricky. Plus,
I didn't know that.
the bush
Okay.
is
So
really
you
tricky.
literally finger.
Yeah, you actually have to just knock off the ripe berries and leave next year's crop on the actual bush. So, Lucy and Bruce have been trying to work out ways that they can actually, improve harvest, and that's one of their big challenges as to how to make that more economic.
I appreciate that. Maybe a job for the dogs somehow. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah,
get a gadget attached to it. Let's talk about your wonderful oyster shell gin. Because I mentioned by way of introduction, I had the pleasure of being there when you kicked it off and being part of that experience, and those amazing oysters from Broadwater, which I still dream about.
That was actually
So
our oyster shell vodka.
it was too. It was. You're right.
Yes, that
It
is our
was.
vodka.
There you go. So
But that's all
equally,
right. But that's been going very well too.
yes, no, no doubt. So tell us about your gin, man. It's a similar process, the production, because you'd come up with a fantastic. And correct me if I've got this wrong, like almost like osmosis in a way with the shells and the way through the distillation process. Voila.
Just give people a visual, just so they know what we're talking about.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
this is our oyster shell gin. Now, this, like, if you're into sustainability, then this is probably one of the most sustainable gins that's made in Australia. I suppose in the Bega Valley, we've actually kicked off a program called the Circular Economy, and we're trying to have a circular valley. Now, circularity is just a new sort of spin, if you like, on sustainability. But what it looks at is how do we keep things that we produce in the economic cycle for longer? And so this is a great example of that. So we use oyster shells when we're making this product. Now, if you think about an oyster, farmer grows the oyster. Okay, the first use is obviously selling the oyster itself. Okay, once that's done, then we take the shells for second use. So we bring them back to the distillery, we clean them very, very vigorously because we can't afford to have even the smallest amount of meat. And I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. But we clean them really vigorously and then we use them in our oyster shell gin. Now, what we're doing there is we're actually extracting calcium.
Right.
And that calcium comes into the liquid. But the challenge that I had, it took me 3 years in developing this product. And the challenge that I had is calcium, if you know much about chemistry, doesn't actually want to attach to alcohol. So it took me quite some time to find a bridging botanical, something that would attach to the alcohol and then pick up the calcium.
Right.
And the end result is you've got this gin which has got this lovely creamy mouthfeel, which makes a perfect candidate, by the way, for a martini.
I know.
Which is what I'm having right now.
It's so subtle. It is so subtle. It's like you have the cleanest, when you have a really magnificent oyster, like the ones you have down there, you get that same expression in a way. It's not in the drink. Like it's bright and it's clean and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
So
when you go back.
Yeah, so you've got that creamy mouthfeel, but then you have this savoury taste profile and a little bit of salinity in there, and it's it tastes a little bit like the ocean in some ways, but doesn't at all. If that makes sense to you at all.
Yeah. No, so clean. So when you're actually distilling, how do you, can you share anything about how you do that without giving the game away?
Oh, well, this is the only gin that we make where we have anything in the pot. Everything else we do via vapor infusion. We only do single shot distillations, so we're very old school that way. But in this case, we actually have them in the pot. And if you think about it, they act like boiling chips in the bottom of the pot. And the alcohol is what's extracting that calcium from the shells. Now, there's not a lot of calcium to be extracted from the shells because a lot of the form of calcium that's in the shells is actually nacre. And even if you go and smash it all up, you're not going to extract it because it's in a form where it's just not soluble. But on the outer side of the shell, there's other forms of calcium which are accessible and are extractable. So that's probably the key to it. But then if you go back and think about the sustainability of this product, then we've used the oyster shells and we've, I suppose, added value to them, if you like. But then when we finished out of the still, we then take those oyster shells and we crush them. We feed them to our chickens because chickens need grit to actually, make the shells on their eggs. So it's a perfect example of a circular process. And everything
Love it.
else that goes into this gin, we grow on the farm. So, that's why I say it's one of the most sustainable products that you will find in Australia. And it's like we're really, I suppose, now we're using Australian Juniper, one of the only true Australian gins that are actually on the shelf, which I think is
I think
fantastic.
it's
And
fantastic too, mate. I do. You've got to be so proud of that. So I'm looking at the website. So everyone's just tuning in. This is the lovely Gavin, founder and co-owner of North of Eden. So go northofeden.com.au. So you've got your classic gin, your new classic now. You've got your connoisseur gin, or the Juniper. We just talked about your oyster shell gin. And I know how much you love your Admiral.
mm-hmm.
We've been talking about Navy strength, strange enough, all day today, which has been kind of fun. What's your approach to Navy strength? Because I've been saying all the way along that the higher ABV is there to carry more flavour, or richer complexity, more spice. Is that the way you look at it, or?
Yeah, very much so. Like one of the great opportunities with a Navy strength gin is you can pack more flavour in as a distiller, and that certainly is like the Admiral is a great example of that. We've been able to build this beautiful blood orange baseline, which we then build upon. We've got hints of spice to liven the palate, which then lifts that citrus experience and also that juniper experience on the palate. And then we use Currajong seeds, which are a native bush tucker, and we've got Currajong growing on the farm, which then is what we use to modify the mouthfeel to give it like a silky mouthfeel. And that combination, the thing that I absolutely love about this particular gin is it doesn't actually drink like 57%. It drinks a much lower percentage. I can tell you it is 57, and if you drink it like it's 40, you will fall over. However, it doesn't drink that way. And one of the tips that I often give people is that, it can be great value buying a Navy strength gin. Yes, they're more expensive when you purchase them, but you can use a smaller amount in a gin and tonic and still get that flavour, and so your bottle lasts long. So in terms of real value for money, if you're disciplined, then a Navy strength can serve you really well.
That's a great approach.
However,
I hadn't thought of it that way, but that makes perfect sense. Absolutely, to stretch it out. Yeah.
However, if you love an overproof martini like I do, then your bottle doesn't last that long anyway.
Evaporation. I hate that evaporation when it happens. It's just, how did that happen?
These things happen.
So, just before I let you go, what's coming down the pipe? Anything new you can share with us, mate? What you guys have got planned?
Yeah, we've got a number of things coming down the pipeline. It looks like we're going to get another wonderful crop this year of lemons, and so our limoncello will be back. Unlike other distilleries, we only make limoncello when our lemons give us enough, because again, we want to focus on that sustainability. Although I have been thinking about reaching out to the community and getting more local lemons, so I'll think about that as we go forward. But this year, it looks like we'll have a great crop. The other exciting thing is that in the not too distant future, we'll launch a brand new product, different category.
Cool.
So this is an absinthe. Now, I spent 18 months growing all the wormwood and elements of this on the farm, and we distilled it probably 3.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's now sitting in a tank, and it's been just a wonderful process to go through, and it will be a proper absinthe. So it's going to be probably bottled at, it'll either be 72% or 68%. So it's a very traditional absinthe product.
I can't wait. I was sent one, I won't say from whom, last year, and it's sensationally good. But I look at it and go, just like it's just like this dark potion of botanical magic, and I don't know how hard it must be to pull that together well, because there's so many complexities to that drink.
It's it's been a lovely learning experience, but again, and I suppose it's true for pretty much all of our spirits, just in terms of the way that we focus on them and how we make them. It's incredibly smooth for its alcoholic percentage. And I don't know whether you can see in the background just behind me here. Can you
And
see
yes,
that?
yeah, on the wall there, yeah, on the shelf. Yeah.
That's an absinthe fountain. So, yeah. Oh,
There you are.
you might be able to,
I can see it.
you
Yeah,
might
yeah,
be able
yeah.
to see it.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah,
it fine. See it fine. Yeah.
yeah. So,
With the little sugar, can you dip the little sugar thing underneath on the little plate?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're making it, you put your glass underneath with your absinthe. You put your iced water in the top, and then you drip from the absinthe fountain. Just a little drips through the cube, and then it creates the perfect absinthe drink at the end. But I think it'll be a wonderful piece of theatre for when people come out to the cellar door, to be able to actually engage in that whole process. Uh,
Yes.
it's
That sounds
essentially
fantastic.
spirits should entertain, and I think absinthe is one of those products where it certainly does entertain.
And those aromatics, when they're done right, are just magical. They really are.
Yeah,
Well, that's a great note to finish on, man. Thank you for sticking back so long and making time to talk today. It's been good to see you again. Sorry it's been so long.
that's all right. We will see you again soon.
You certainly will, mate. Bring a dog down or something and the dogs can hang out together. So, friends, northofeden.com.au. Check them out. Follow them on Instagram. Very special. You've just heard a very special distillery doing amazing things, especially in the Juniper and oysters and sustainability space. So, Gav, I'll let you go. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk again another time. All right, stay well, my friends. Say hi to everybody down there.
Will do.
All right, good night.
Bye for now.
All right, so
Bye,
click yourself out and we'll be done.
Oh, okay. That's the X button.
That's the X button. All right, mate. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. If you just tuned in, Philip Jones, Martini Whisperer here. We're almost an hour to go on our World Gin Day adventures. In a few minutes, we're going to be talking to Lord Howe Island. Exactly. And at 6:30, so in half an hour from now, thereabouts, the Master Distiller from Plymouth Gin, which is really exciting, on location distillery in the UK. And we'll finish up at 7 o'clock with Eureka Distillery out of Sydney. So if you can stick around and tune in. If you've got a favourite gin, by all means, make a comment below. We'd like to hear it. If you heard what Gavin was speaking about, a single shot distillation process, what that means, or one shot method, it's called. It's either one shot or multi-shot method. And I'm going to read you from this great book, Australian Gin, from David Fox, and George Truly's in there somewhere as well, way back when. So one shot method, you've got your spirit, you get botanicals, obviously some water. They're all put into contact to each other. So imagine you, again, like a big pot, and you're, oh, hey, chemistry gin. Nice to see you. Oh, if you can make 7:30 and my voice lasts, yeah, it'd be great for you to jump on the call. Now you're out of the airport or not going to the airport or whatever. Friends, work chemistry gin, another New Zealand distiller. So if you can make 7:30, we can definitely do that. Absolutely. That'd be swell. And then I'll need to lie down and drink a nice drink myself, actually, because that's only water. So one shot, it's all done in one process, basically. So they're all loaded into the still, into the body of the still, like so. You can imagine it can be like all chucked in together like a stock, or as I said, or little baskets and things like that. And so it's heated together, of course, and all those flavours are blended together, and it all just comes out in one single process. If you've got a multi-shot, essentially what you're doing is multiple processes of same, so you might have the distillation combined with the nutrient water at a different time. So a bit more control, basically, but the single shot is when it's all together in one process and not changed after it's done. So what you get is what you've got, so to speak. So there's that. So yes, amazing that oyster gin and oyster vodka they make down there is terrific. So if you've got a favourite gin, let me know in the chat down below. As I said, thanks for tuning in. World Gin Day. So we've been covering some gin facts and styles of gin. We've done non-alcoholic gin. One gin we haven't touched on is a gin called style of gin, rather. So we've got Navy Strength, London Dry, Compound, Cordial. Sometimes those pink gins are a bit artificial. Of course, the London Dry, like I said, the Navy Strength, the barrel aged, and slow gin. So that's a very old form of gin. There's quite a few, not a few, maybe. It comes out of England originally. You'll see a lot in Tasmania. Like in Plymouth, who we're going to meet a bit later, make a terrific classic slow gin as well. Essentially, they're berries, slow berry, surprise, surprise. They're a bit like on a holly bush, usually a winter crop from memory. And they take them, you do thousands of them, you pick little things, you put them in spirit, often with a bit of sugar, a lot of sugar, and then macerate them for quite some time. And depending on which distiller you're talking to, it could be a few weeks, it could be a few months. Then that's strained off, and essentially you've just infused the spirit of all the flavour of the sugar and the berries. And you get a kind of, it's not tart and not sweet, it's somewhere in between. It's kind of plummy, earthy plummy, the umami there. And it's a very old school form of making it. So, but slow gin, when it's done right, it's a lovely thing. Usually it's by itself, it's not one you tend to mix. I've tried it and you can do it, but yeah, there's that. So in a minute, we're going to be having Christian from Lord Howe Island. So if you don't know Lord Howe Island, it's a spectacular island off the coast of New South Wales. And let's see if he's around. He's not here yet, so we'll see how we're going there. And if there's any issues with him jumping on the call, he's not due to another few minutes. With several time zones, what could possibly go wrong, right? We got there in the end with New Zealand at the start of the thing, right? So let me just double check any messages that have come through. There's a single band here. But if you've got a favourite gin, make a comment. I'd love to hear what you're loving. But he's got a few minutes yet. So whilst we're doing, let's go to the bar and look at some more gins while we're waiting for Lord Howe Island to join us. So now again with the self-selection. Thank you, Chemistry. Stay by. The Federation Gin, isn't this, try and get the bottle back down that way, and it's back to front. But what a gorgeous label this is. You can't actually get this one anymore. I've been saving it. And this is from Tasmania called the Henry. And what's the trick around this one? They sell it at Parliament House here in Canberra. And they've got a different botanical from around Australia. So one per state, if you like. So you've got Northern Territory, Kakadu Plum, a lemon myrtle from Queensland, strawberry gum from New South Wales, pepper leaf, mountain pepper leaf from this region because we've got mountains around here, ACT, cinnamon myrtle from Victoria, celery top pine from Tassie, wattle seed from South Australia, and quandong from WA. And it should be a train wreck, but it's not. It's fantastic. Speaking of interesting gins, isn't this a beautiful bottle too? This one. So this is the first Australian Indigenous distiller out of Northern Territory, Darwin, the Larrakia traditional owners. And so Seven Seasons are the makers. They do a couple of them, including Kakadu Plum. If you hear a dog over there, Cosmo's just woken up. Yeah, you've just woken up, making a racket. So if any noises off, that's the dog. So Green Ant Gin. And you'll see here, green ants. And it's not a guinea. They are traditional owners, and it's proper bush tucker. So they're gone on the trees, and they put bags around the leaves and shake them and catch the ants that way, basically, in the bush. And it's a really interesting. It's got kaffir lime, finger lime, all sorts of things are in here. And so 7 seasons as opposed to 4 seasons. So in their country, it's 7 seasons. And they say windy time, August, September. When it blows, we feast on the floodplain. Stingrays are plentiful, and the bum gets fat on the green ant, bush ant, which are what these are. Hand-picked during the big wind time by the Larrakia people, native green ants give the gin fresh lime and coriander flavours. So there are now another 2, maybe 3 Indigenous-owned distilleries in Australia now, but these were guys that are the first, and really worth looking out for. You get a bit of a chili kick at the back when you have it. So that's really interesting. Now let's see if Lord Howe here. I might just send him a message. So stand by, everybody. Still like to hear if you've got a comment on what favourite gin you got. Yeah, so I just sent him a message. So process chemistry. It's going to be, and we'll just swap time around. Excuse me, I'll have a glass of water here. I want to show you a little gin fact. It's probably worth reminding ourselves that the start of gin, way back when, in the 1400s thereabouts, was around the spice trade out of the Dutch the Dutch who had this, the Netherlands, as we say, and they were bringing. Okay, I think we're in business with Lord Howe Island here. Stand by. So chemistry will stay at our time we just talked about. Hang on, I'm just doing two things at once here. Just waiting for you to join the chat. That's fine. This is fun. Hope you're enjoying yourselves and finding some stuff along the way. Aren't distillers just amazing? All their creativity and their passion. That's why I like doing things like this. You know, they've all got such incredible stories to tell. And they do kind of put themselves and their businesses and their passion on the line. Yeah, and they make good stuff, right? All around the world. Gin's a thing. Gin's more than just once in a glass, right? So I'm just going to get my books organised. These are books, by the way, we're waiting for. Gin Glorious Gin by Olivia Williams. This is a great read. I know it's back to the front there. It's the history of gin, especially from the UK perspective. And actually there's a bit of intermarriage between the different families back in the day, like Tanqueray and stuff, and how gin's got made. It reads like a novel. And this is really well. Eureka, happy Gin Day to you. Just one day, David T. Smith, the Gin Dictionary. Just, you know, Hendricks, Greenhalgh's, herbs, Gin Guild, what is Juniper, all the deal with various botanicals and things like that. So quite handy. Bathtub gin. Hang on, just sending another message to Lord Howe. Community connection, as he knows, in rural regional Australia can be a bit challenging as well. So we've had a little bit of that today, but that's okay. That aged gin, so that's a great one. What else we got? If you can find it, Gin Tonic Car Company out of Victoria. So the Australian gin, you know, the thing about the gin scene, it moves so much. Here we go. I think this is it. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Lord Howe Island Distillery. Let's see if it's going to work. Here he is. Hello, Christian.
G'day.
Good to see you.
How are you?
Good to meet you, and thank you for coming on board today.
Thank you very much, and what a great day it is.
It's Christmas, man, I tell you. All good, all good, all good. I was just talking about some of the gin books we've got, and we've been having some fine chats with some very fine distillers so far.
Yeah.
So it's been absolutely fascinating.
I saw the line-up, and it looked very good.
Yeah, I was really chuffed. Like I said, I just put the word out there, and I'm delighted that you particularly can make the time to do it. We've got a lot to talk about, and some things like Juniper's been a big theme, needless to say. You know, water's been a big theme today. Navy strength keeps coming up a fair bit for some reason, so good to talk about that too.
That's fantastic. Navy strength. We actually just took out a trophy with the Royal Agricultural Society of New South Wales last year, which was delivered this year for our Wolf Rock Navy strength. And I believe a number of years ago, that was, I think, the first one that I sent to you for a bit of a review and critique. So yeah, it was. We've finally been, given the gong that we thought it was deserved, but we got it.
That's awesome.
Which was great.
Congratulations, that's awesome. I mean, people have different. I know the industry have different views about different award programs, but Gavin from North of Evans was saying, he was saying that they've always medalled every show they've won, like International Wine Spirit Comp or something like that. And for him, as a distiller, it's not so much about winning. That's also nice and getting a recognition for that, but it shows about the consistency.
Yes.
Year in, year out. You know, for him, that means they're staying true to what they've set out to achieve, so to speak. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's set the scene. Let's set the scene for everybody. Lord Howe Island. I know you're in Sydney today. So let's talk about the connection and what makes Lord Howe special. I mean, you're the first gin to come from there, so to speak. So can we talk about that?
Yeah.
How it came about?
Oh, look. I grew up on the island for many years with my family on a summer holiday for first 25 years of my life. And so that was the connection. My grandfather fell in love with it, and I was very lucky, he took 30 of my family members up each year for a month. And it was an amazing existence, learning to ride a bike, learning to, surf a board, go hiking with your grandmother and your aunts and uncles and that sort of thing. So an amazing opportunity. And so it was actually, and when they passed away, obviously no one's taking you to Lord Howe anymore. And it was actually my wife and when my family get together, it's very much, Mount Gower this and Blinky Beach that and that sort of thing. And she cracked it one year before her 40th and said, I am sick to death of hearing about Cobby's Corner and Ned's Beach, and I want to go to Lord Howe. And so I said, righto, no kids, let's go. And we got there, and within about an hour, she punches me in the arm and said, I can't believe you've been keeping this a secret. And so the rest is history. I met up with a range of my old friends who are islanders, and my very good friend Anthony Riddle, who is a sixth generation islander. So he's born, raised, and operates his business and lives with his family on the island, and a really key part of the community there. The island is home to 114 botanicals that don't occur anywhere else on the planet.
Really?
So this is a really, really unique, selling proposition. It's a really unique product that we're able to create and manufacture on the island. We work very closely with the Lord Howe Island Board, the national parks and marine parks. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Island. So there's a lot of whatever your other distillers have said tonight it's been difficult about, dealing with council, and I can promise you nothing compares to a UNESCO World Heritage Island and being 600 k's offshore. It really is unique. If it's not on your bucket list, please, please, please put it on. It's an amazing place. And look, Sir David Attenborough, uh, basically said it was like Jurassic Park. And the botanicals they have found, and they are still finding. The last new botanical they found was only 5 years ago, and up the top of these mountains, they are still finding new plants that it blows the mind. So what we are doing is we are going through testing with in our for R&D, research and development. We work with the ATO on that as well. And we put them through mass spectrometer testing to work out, ideally what's poisonous and what's not. Some of the stuff we're never going to be able to use. But we have created a side sister business called Lord Howe Island Perfumery, and something that is not necessarily great for a beverage would actually be great on the skin and as a cream or that sort of thing. So
Interesting.
there's a range of things that we're working on.
That's exciting. Wow, I had no idea about that. I mean, it's unique World Heritage, and the rest of it is botanical. It's extraordinary. So, what if for those? I think you've got. I'm looking at the wild lemon tree and hibiscus. There's an interesting story about the lemons, for example.
Yeah.
You want to share that one? Yeah.
Absolutely. So the lemons were planted by early whalers in the 1830s. And what the whalers that would whale, and back then it was all about sperm whale oil, because that was the fuel that would for your lamps, and because there was no electricity back then. So they would use Lord Howe Island basically as their coals or woolies, in that they would be out there, and so they didn't have to come back to the mainland for their fresh water and their food. And obviously scurvy back then was a really big thing. If you didn't get fresh fruit, you were going downhill pretty fast. So they planted some citrus trees on the island, and they propagated and proliferated, and they could go back to the island, which was 600 k's from the mainland, stock up on fresh fruit and veg, and also grab some fresh water and head out back to those great whaling grounds.
Fantastic, fantastic. So take it back to the origin story of your distillery. So once you got over your wife, you told the wife, so to speak, how'd you come around to go, okay, let's put this magic place in a bottle somehow?
Look, I looked around. I met with Anthony, and we had a great time, and showing my wife around all of these amazing stories. When we were growing up as kids, and going and visiting these places, and nothing had really changed, and nothing really changes on the island as well. It is in a great way. Stuck in time. There's no internet. There's no mobile towers. There is internet, but it's very limited. So it has a few unique features that you don't get on the mainland. And I simply spoke to Anthony, and I looked around after 20 years of not being there, and people were still drinking Bombay Sapphire and Gordon's Gin and Tui's New and all of the big guys. And I literally said, we're on the most iconic island in the world. I think we can do better. And Anthony and I hatched that plan then. And then working with the board very closely in both in a research and development and also commercial foraging license. And we've been able to pull together a range of botanicals that work extremely well endemically in our products.
Fantastic. How long did it take you to kind of land your first gin, so to speak, of that prototyping?
I tell you what. So we're probably unlike most of your guests tonight, and most distillers in Australia, and obviously being 600 k's offshore as our base. We actually started in 2019 in Melbourne,
Right.
of all places. Contract distilling was not a big thing in New South Wales at that time, and we worked with a mob called Craft & Co, which were amazing. Amanda, big shout out to Amanda, who helped us, and we started and we worked with them on a recipe. And sometimes, and all of your distillers people on tonight will say, sometimes you'll work with a recipe and it will take 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 times to get. We nailed it. What I think our gold medal signature gin, which is now, we nailed it in 2. So 2 recipes we did in 2. We did it in Melbourne as a full contract. We then, during COVID, brought it to Sydney as a contract, and then we got our manufacturing license. And I'm actually talking to you today from Otter Craft Distilling, and Edward Otter OCD is his brand, has been an amazing friend and support to us, in that we actually distill under our own license with our own still in his distillery. And that's how we started. And then we've now set up a distillery on the island, as it's taken so long through all of that red tape. So we distill about 40% of our volume on the island.
Yes.
And then for our SKUs that are more high volume, it just doesn't make any sense to ship empty bottles over offshore, do it, and then ship all of the bottles back. So anything you'll find in Dan Murphy's and BWS, it still has the amazing botanicals of Lord Howe, but we do this from our base in Sydney.
That makes absolutely perfect sense. And for those who are aware, contract distilling is a very important part of the industry, and it's very powerful. And I was thinking, well, I could have a drink. I could do a drink myself right now. I'll have one after I'm done. I've got a ways to go yet. I've got another an hour and a bit. This is great fun though. I helped consult to a distiller who was creating a truffle gin. And,
oh wow!
And so easier said than done.
Yes.
You can see, well, there's not many of them around, and he chose 2. So I was kind of partly market testing and partly design. But then he had 2 contract distillers, and they had very, very different approaches. And one came with very successful, ended up with about 15 different versions of. We had no idea what style he wanted. But I'll be very quick about the story. So we landed the recipe. I market tested the blind testing and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't just the friends and family going that we love it. It was actually people in industry and people whatever going,
Yeah.
don't tell anyone about it, try that. So we landed it, and so they had done an individual batch distillation process. So truffle one run, and then people do
Yes.
whatever the case may be, and then blend by percentage. When they went to scale, you caught up in a panic going, it tastes terrible. Like they kept the same ratio, but when they went to scale,
It just didn't work.
it just didn't work.
Wow.
And so they had to go back to the at volume individual
Yeah.
distillation process and blend from that. So it's great. She had a very accomplished result, but there's a lot of effort and craft and skill goes into making.
Absolutely, and that does. I mean, we keep we don't. When you talk to scale, we're talking sort of 350 liters as opposed to a 2 liter pot still sort of thing, where you would do your base recipe, you then scale it to maybe 5 liters and that sort of thing. But sometimes it can change quite drastically, which is interesting. But truffle, I've never used a truffle, but that is. That sends alarm bells to me. That can be quite difficult.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. The result's great. That's in well-known shops now, so it went ended very well. I want to ask you about water, though. So given the water on Lord Howe Island must be equally special, yeah? It's a secret sauce?
Yeah, look, we think it is. We're actually sending our first bottles into competition from the island right in the next 2 weeks. So we'll see what we see. Look, there's no running water on the island. There's really no gutters. There's no town water, so to speak. All the water you've got comes off your roof and into your tank, and that is on each single premises on the island. So there's 380 residents on the island at any one time, give or take, and then there's 400 beds for tourists at any one time. So the maximum you've got is about 800 people, but every single dwelling has its own water tank on the side. So yes, the water comes off. We send it through the usual filtration, the three stage filtration. Send it through a UV just to make sure there's no nasties in there. But that's it.
Yep.
That is. It's straight from the sky, and when your car gets rained on, in Canberra or Sydney, you can get some dust from the far west or that sort of thing. There's none of that 600 k's out to sea, right? So obviously we've got that on the island. We use RO, reverse osmosis here in Sydney. So it does take out all the bits and pieces, but we do love our water on the island.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've got friends who've been there. That lovely, really nice hotel. Your name escapes me. They've been
Capella.
there. Yes, yeah.
Right under the mountains. You literally you have a gin and tonic, and you've just got the mountains there in front of you.
Yeah, I owe my wife a holiday, so I think we'll go there next.
Well, if you do need to go, and anyone on on your podcast tonight, please get in contact with us directly. We would love to send you in the right direction on the island. Places to stay, things to do, and obviously get a distillery tour in on the way as well.
That'd be amazing. Thanks for the offer to everybody listening. So again, so it's Lord. Try that again. Lord Howe Island Distilling. So your website's lhidistillingco.com.au, and obviously tune in right after this to Christian here on his Instagram and stay in touch. Now, before I let you go, so looking at your site, you've got the Wild Lemon Hibiscus we touched on, the Mountain Rose Gin, the fantastic Rock. Try that again. My voice is going. Wolf Rock Navy Strength. Try that 3 times. Your Bauer Age, which I really enjoyed as well, which is fantastic. And the Wild Lemon, and we talked about the lemons. Anything else in the pipeline? Got planned?
Yeah, absolutely. So we haven't. I mean, we did a little bit of social about this a few years ago, but we've been very quiet since, just testing. But we have our first whiskey down, and we're at 3.5 years aged now. We're going to pull it out at 4. Of course, with this sort of thing, you need to taste all the way along, and it is tasting absolutely incredible.
And
So
did it age on the island? I have to ask. Is it a wow?
absolutely, it aged on the island.
Yeah.
And my whiskey. Look, I'm not a whiskey aficionado. I'm a rum guy myself, and we are working on a rum as well, but it's not as progressed as the whiskey. But we're hoping, cross fingers, January next year, we will be launching our first whiskey, and with this one, uh, my whiskey aficionado friends tell me that obviously you've got the beautiful, salty air and warm, breezes wafting over. But I didn't realize how much barometric pressure actually makes a difference with barrel with liquid in barrels. And because we're sitting out in the ocean, and you would remember because of the floods and everything on the mainland, we get cyclones big time out, that far out. And what happens is when you get lows and highs, the liquid presses into the barrel and then gets sucked out of the barrel. And so what that means is more flavor, more flavor, more flavor, and more mellow.
Right.
And so I'm really super interested. So in that time, we've had 3 cyclones. We've had a couple of depressions that have come down, but we've had 3 cyclones, some pretty big ones actually. So this will mean more flavor. So I'm super, looking forward to putting this in the market. I mean, I know it tastes amazing, but putting this in the market and actually seeing what the market wants. Oh, thank you. I'm here at OCD, and they've given me a little charcuterie and cheese board.
Rub it in. My tummy's rumbling. I'll come one final thing. Just one last question, Ben. I'll let you be. The enjoy that lovely food. The manja manja. The I guess by virtue of saying at the very top of the conversation about just why gin is exciting as a whole, because with a few basic parameters, the sky's the limit at what you can express, right? And you've got that lovely virtue of just having such a unique premise of what you do. And so surely just whatever you present, quality is terrific, goes without saying, people are going to be open to it. You know what I mean? So interesting. I know we're talking about gin, but whiskey for a minute. That must give you so much confidence in terms of, well, here's something truly unique that can't be replicated, that's, at the World Heritage UNESCO site, the whole box and dice. So all power to you, man. Thank you again for making time for us having a chat.
Thank you, and thanks for reaching out to us. And we're happy to speak to you at any time. I know I've just caught up with Claudia, who I know you are good friends with at Underground.
Yeah.
We're all, I sit on the board of the New South Wales, I co-chair New South Wales ACT Distillers Association, and sit on the board of the Australian Distillers Association. And so what we want to do, yes, we sit 600 k's offshore, but for us, it's about showcasing New South Wales and ACT spirits. We've got unique botanicals in Australia as a whole, but even then, in New South Wales, and then even then on Lord Howe. So we just want to showcase these, do the best possible thing, to the market, and sell some gin.
So fine, noble ambition. Well, maybe as I said, I've mentioned my series from time to time, and that's been shopped as we speak. So if we get some positive noises, we'll be talking soon. Don't worry.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Great to see you. And thanks for your time.
You too. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Jump out. Yep. Okay. Amazing. What amazing stories we've got tonight. Amazing stories. Welcome, everybody. If you're just joining in, Philip Jones rearranging the set here. One-man band. Cosmo's being a very good boy. Sleeping there. So, in a minute, we'll be heading to the UK to meet the fine people, us distillers of Plymouth Gin. So I'm super excited about that. And I've been a bit cheeky. I've kept on the original old bottles. I probably won't like me for that. Anyway. So yes, we've been talking since a few hours now. So we've talked to Island Gin on the Barrier Island off the coast of Auckland, Little Juniper out of South Australia, north of Eden, south coast of New South Wales. We've just talked to Christian and Lord Howe Island. What an amazing story. And they've got the distillery there now. So he said, make sure you follow them on Instagram, Lord Howe Island Distilling Co. Check their website out. He says if you're going there, because only a few hundred people can go to the island at any given time, and you want to visit, and they've got a brand new cellar door there that's taken a long time to get there because it's 600 k's off the coast of New South Wales. Reach out to them directly and they'll point you to the good stuff and show you around. So that's a nice offer. So we're going in a minute to Plymouth Gin. And I was really chuffed when I reached out via Instagram, and people do pin me to the floor a lot. And welcome everybody to World Gin Day. Hope you're having a great one. In case I'm just this water, not gin, by the way. I'm looking forward to my martini after we've done this. So we'll talk to Plymouth Gin in a minute. Sean Harrison, who's the head distiller there, master distiller, he's very graciously made some time to speak to us at the distillery. Then at 7 o'clock, we're talking to Eureka Distilling out of Sydney. And a late inclusion is the chemistry gin people. We're coming full circle around the planet, back to New Zealand later, and having a nice chat to them, which is kind of nice. And we nearly had Italy in the mix as well, but it's been very complicated to organising all this. So yes, people do ask me, geez, my favourite gin, and I really can't call favourites because I'm surrounded and gifted by amazing creativity from distillers around the world. I was doing a tour too. I've done New Mexico, I've done England. This is one I've been saving too, out of Germany. With 5 minutes to go. Years ago, I went to Berlin for Christmas, or whatever, for a family holiday anyway. And of course, I made a beeline, reached out to any distillers there, and there was one, and it's Berliner Brandstifter. It's a bit hard to pronounce. It sounds better in German. It's German gin scene is very interesting. There's an old article about this on my website. You want to look it up. 2013. Gosh, that was a while ago. Super lovely guys. And so there's a contemporary vibe because gin was not really anything in Germany much to speak of, traditionally speaking. But you've got Ferdinand gin. I gave so much away. Too generous. Anyway, so exciting. But what I come back to a lot is, frankly, Plymouth Gin. It's my comfort zone. And there's usually a bottle in my freezer any given time. That's my go-to. But it's a bit hard to get around here. So at the minute, for various reasons. So that's okay. It's worth waiting for. So we're just waiting for Plymouth to join us. And met their people last week to go through that. So their agency, they're very busy. Just sending a note to them saying, yes, so that's really exciting. So if you're, and if you've got a favourite gin, here we go. Now, here we go. So let's say hi to Plymouth, shall we? Hello. Here we go. Monsieur, Sean.
Hello, good morning, good evening.
And to you, happy World Gin Day.
Thank you very much.
Probably, is it tomorrow for you, or is it today?
It's Saturday morning, so it's 9:30 Saturday morning.
Too early to speak about gin, I don't think.
Yeah, so well, my day's just beginning to think about gin. So yes, long lazy lunch is the plan for the rest of the day.
Is that a fact? Oh, I'm jealous. Look, seriously, thank you so much for making the time to speak with me today, this morning. I was saying before you jumped on, you may have heard it or not, people do ask me a lot what my favourite gin is, and clearly I'm spoiled for choice, like many people. And I just keep coming back to your spirit, and I'm not just saying it because I'm speaking to it. I think, and we want to unpack this a bit the time we've got together. It's one of the most venerable brands around the world. I was saying at the very beginning of the conversation, we're looking at maybe 7,000 brands around the world, or one form or another of gin, maybe 5,500 to 7,000. Yours is one of the oldest around the world, truly. In many ways, depending who you talk to, it's almost its own category of gin in terms of almost got its own heritage appellation. In some levels.
It used to. Basically, it's something that we gave up a few years ago. So yeah, it's quite scary really, because when I started in '94, there was 12 gin distilleries making 20 gins. So then when you talk about 7,000 different brands and everything else, that's a really good journey in like 30 years. And it's the flavour profiles and everything else that have gone through have been massive. But it is one of the sort of nice things in it is to look after a really old brand like Plymouth Gin, because that's it. I'm the custodian of the recipe, and when I decide I've had enough and I retire, the next person will come along, and that's the way the world is. So to keep the brand the same effectively for 200 years is quite an achievement for all of us that have gone before me.
Absolutely, and I know we've got some things we want to talk about, but can I just go back to that just a little bit, please, Sean? Because you'll go to bars like at the famous bar in Atlas in Singapore, for example, and their big collection of, you know, the place. It's extraordinary fun, and they've got, you know, old bottles of this and old, I think Gordon's was the one, and other labels and stuff. You know, like this museum they have.
Yep.
In your opinion, has there been much change? Like you talk about Plymouth brand, for example. The recipe is what it is for your standard gin. How do you, has it evolved in any shape or form, or
it absolutely does? Yeah. And it's one of the beauties about making gin is because we use natural ingredients and they grow every year. Every single year they're slightly different. Right. The French have a great word for it, which is terroir, and that talks about the soil, the sun, the rain, the hillside, how the climate is for that particular growing season, and everything else. Because what we're doing with the botanicals, we're generally extracting essential oils out of plants. And how the plant grows depicts how it's going to make those essential oils for the year. And they will always be slightly different, and they will always have slightly different percentages in the plant depending on the growing year. So that's the fun bit, if you like, is to make sure that you, the consumer, don't notice that Mother Nature can sometimes be awkward. So we spend an awful lot of time selecting them to keep the flavour profiles the same. But I can guarantee if you go and get a bottle of Plymouth Gin from 10 years ago, it will be subtly different just because we use natural ingredients. And, you know, even on every single still run, they are slightly different. So we have a large, what we call a blending vat, where we can put lots of different distillations into to make sure that you don't notice a difference between individual distillations. So that's the fun side about making gin.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you have a master distiller? What's question about notice, shall we say? What's the relationship with your suppliers? Because then the people who bring your botanicals to you, I mean, what's that relationship like? Must be very important.
Oh gosh, it's an integral part of what we do. So we work with about sort of 6 different suppliers in the UK and into Europe, because that's where most of our botanicals is European. And you know, it's like this week, I've spoken to 2 of our suppliers. So because we're about to go into the coriander season, and then straight after the coriander season, we're about to disappear into the juniper season. So it's just getting a feel for how the year's going, you know, whether the crop's looking good, whether they're not looking good, whether it's been a dry year, a wet year, and all the other things that you generally talk about when you're using commodities such as anything that grows. Fascinating.
Let's wind back then, because you've been in that role almost 20 years now, thereabouts. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So and your background's Royal Navy, if I've read that correctly too. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a strange route to get to where I've got to be perfectly honest. So my last job in the Royal Navy was in Plymouth, because Plymouth is one of the major Royal Navy ports. Mm-hmm. And in my last 9 months, I met Rachel, who foolishly agreed to marry me. And we moved in together. And then this is obviously the days before the internet. So every Thursday, the local paper would come out with all the jobs in it. And the assistant manager's job was advertised at Plymouth Gin. So I just sent in my CV on the first post on Friday morning, not really knowing what was going to happen. Yeah. And here we are all those years later. And I consider my timing to be absolutely brilliant because of what I said earlier. When I started, very few gins. Now we've got thousands. There's a lot more interest. People are more picky about drinking gin, which is always good. And it's just been a ride, and it's been brilliant.
That's interesting to see, because I was one of my early observations on today's chat was how you think of the evolution of that industry, as you say, there's a handful of traditional brands, if you like, and then I guess this new world brands start to emerge. And I also, shout out to Hendrix, for example, who kind of broke the mold in some ways from a commercial sense, right? And people could see what you could do, right? And then people my end, and New Zealand, and Canada, and America, and stuff. And then it kind of went back to UK, where you had these traditional brands sort of responding to this innovation and creativity. And it's not necessarily a binary choice. It's like there's room for everybody.
Yeah, it's been an interesting, because if you go back to the sort of early mid-90s, the cocktail bar scene was just beginning to refresh itself. The only place really we can get cocktails, really high-end cocktail, was in hotels, so like the Savoy or the Dorchester or somewhere like that. And then a couple of bars opened in London because they found some old cocktail books talking about making fresh drinks, with fresh juices and everything else. But the one thing that linked them all together is the fact that gin is the heart of all cocktails, pretty much. If you pick up an old cocktail book, they are going to be 80% gin cocktails and 20% the rest. It's what gin is all about, is making cocktails, using flavors, using to build around to create great drinks, which is why you get things like the martini or the gimlet, or something like an original pink gin. I have to say original pink gin nowadays because people don't know what a pink gin actually is. It's just one of the bizarre things that's changed in the last 10 years.
I know,
so.
I prefer the old one. Yeah. I prefer the original version myself too.
Yeah, so do I, particularly first drink of the day. It's really great. But it has been a journey. So, and actually, as all the sort of traditional gin brands started in the early 2000s, it started the sort of, if you're making your own gin, what do you do that's different to what somebody else has done? What's your USP?
Yes.
And that's when you start to explore different botanicals. And that's when you go, so if you look at the gins from about 2005 to about 2015, you're talking about using some non-traditional gin botanicals you'll find locally. And you talked about the ones just then about places in Australia and New Zealand and things like that. And then we move on to flavors. So the adding of like strawberry flavors or berry flavors or doing something like that, copying a little bit about like the vodka guys were doing. So yeah, it's been a very interesting flavor journey, and that's the thing about it. It is the great thing about gin. It can fit so many different drinks, and it allows itself to go in so many different directions, because the only ingredient you need to put in, which I think you said earlier on this morning, is juniper. After that, you can do whatever you like. Basically, it makes it a fascinating tool to play with.
Which brings us back to why I certainly appreciate Plymouth Gin, because whilst we've been talking about creativity and some innovation, especially new world sort of gins, and they're amazing for what they're coming up with, and it's great to have that palette of expression, which is almost infinite. Your gin is so versatile because it's not boxed into one particular dominant botanical, shall we say, flavor profile that way.
We've been really lucky because if you go back to 200 odd years when the recipe was originally put together, they generally didn't know what they were doing, and it is that journey. When you're putting a gin recipe together, it is very much hit and miss about what you do. And what's happened over the last couple of 100 years is we make G&A a lot better. So the invention of the coffee still in the late 1800s was a massive step forward when it comes to making clean, pure, if you like, G&A. And that then allowed the flavors to come through. We are now able to select them better because although the equipment we use is from the 1930s, we can still understand what's going on in the individual ingredients a lot better. So whilst the recipe is exactly the same, the actual technology behind the making process has got better. Although the still we use here at Plymouth is still from, well, I've got a photograph from 1906 and it's in it. So it's a little bit older than that, but we're not quite sure how old it is. So it's still a good 120 years old.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
Actually the technology we use, the science we're using and the technology we're using is hundreds and thousands of years old. But what it comes down to is it's the ratios between the ingredients, and the ratios between the ingredients and the way that you get the interaction of the essential oils. And we don't have a dominant botanical. So yes, juniper is the largest ingredient that goes into Plymouth Gin, but not by a lot. And then all the other ones that follow it, because we've obviously only got the 7, we end up with quite a close ratio of flavors. And what that means is that it ends up being incredibly user-friendly because you can take it in different directions.
Exactly right.
So if you add vermouth, you can become, I would argue literally with anybody, that Plymouth is actually the best martini gin on the planet. It's and you can make or break a Plymouth martini by the vermouth you choose. So we all have a personal choice of vermouth, and there's quite a few of those, which makes choosing martinis. And then it's whether you use olives or olive brine, or whether you have a twist, or whether you don't, or whether you make a Gibson. I had a really good friend who described a martini as like making a cup of tea. It's exactly the same ingredients, but you can take it in a million different directions. And that's exactly what you can do with a martini. Two ingredients and a couple of garnishes.
That's hence my quiet obsession, Sean.
Yeah.
And for me, with Plymouth, it's usually in my freezer, like I said, so viscosity is there, and I use Dollar Dry and a fresh lemon peel. We can't get Amalfi lemons here, unfortunately, like you guys can get over there, but we make do, and that's me. That's like a 1 to 10 ratio, and that's my happy place.
Yeah. All I would do is take out the garnish. I don't do garnishes in my martini.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I'm not one for the big peel. Digressing a little bit, so I usually cut it quite fine and just do a little, and then out it goes, kind of thing. Because I don't want it taking over. Let's come back to you though. So let's talk about sustainability, because I know that's a very important part of the Plymouth story now, in terms of the way you operate the distillery, and also, I guess, your commitment to environment in general.
Yeah, it's something we've been on a journey now, so probably about 15 years, and we have to take best use of the technology as it comes along. And one of the things for us that's recently changed a couple of years ago is we made the decision to go through an electric boiler, so that we could turn the distillery into being fossil fuel free. So for many years, the electricity to the distillery has been hydro. So we've been sort of making the energy as green as we can, but we've still been using natural gas to run the boiler. So we did a project, and about 12 months ago, we got rid of the gas boiler, and now we use an electric boiler. And because we're using hydroelectricity, so we're completely fossil fuel on the production of Plymouth Gin. And then all of the packaging is recycled. Glass, we've lightened the bottle as much as we can, and we've got a high content of recycled glass in it.
Great.
So we are actively trying to take every single step. But technology sometimes is not your friend. So even in a glass bottle, there's lots of energy needed to be used to make glass. So we're trying to find suppliers that are looking to change the way they make their glass. So it's a definite journey, but it's a great thing that actually more and more people are doing it. And the other thing we've started doing over the last few years is we support the local, what they call Ocean Trust. They are based in Plymouth, about 200 or so meters away from the distillery. And they are working on seagrass in Plymouth Sound. Plymouth Sound is a large harbour in front of the town, and we're supporting them doing their seagrass project. So yeah, it's sort of something that we're quite passionate about, is trying to because we're fortunate that we're in a position where we can do a bit of leading on it. So which is always great to do.
That's true, truly. Let's jump back to your gins then. So people will know, obviously, the classic. I'd love to talk about the Navy Strength. That has come up a lot today for some reason. And your famous slow gin. I was just talking about slow gin just before. We've got some nice local varieties. But that's been around forever.
Well, yeah. So the Navy Strength is an interesting one to start with, because it's old 100 proof. And if you guys, are you familiar with the story of where you get to with gunpowder and 100 proof?
I've heard various stories, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Okay, fine. So, in the days before you could ABV alcohol, or you could, or they worked out that water and alcohol were different weights, which is how you can work out ABV. The only way to tell whether your product had alcohol in it was to mix it with gunpowder, and then set fire to the gunpowder. And if the gunpowder ignited, then it was above what they deemed to be 100 proof. And we're not talking about confining the gunpowder so it goes bang. You're talking about it fizzing and hissing on the top of on a thing. So you either had it in, or there was alcohol in your product, or there wasn't. And then they fine-tuned it. So technically 100 proof in English, because it's different in American, is 57.14%. So, and then what a Scottish customs officer worked out, a guy called Sykes, is how to start doing specific gravity, so recognizing the difference between alcohol and water, and doing it that way. But 100 proof is where it used to be. So that's effectively the early origins of Plymouth Gin in 1793 would have been, give or take, around about 100 proof. And it fell out of favour because it was quite a bold strength at 57%. And then what we did for our 200th anniversary in 1993 is we bottled a batch of Plymouth Gin at 100 proof, which by the mid-90s was becoming terminology that people didn't really understand, because we all went ABV in Europe in the early 80s. And then in 96, when Plymouth Gin was bought by effectively a management buyout, we wanted to keep 100 proof going, but we needed another name for it. And that's where Navy Strength came in, because we had a gap on our label. And one of our owners was a gentleman by the name of John Murphy, who'd started a band called Interbrand, which is still around.
Yeah.
And John came up with the term Navy Strength. So so that's where it all started.
That's fascinating. And I showed you this before in our earlier meeting, and I've got one of the earlier bottles back to me. But I do remember seeing the Navy with a red label.
Yes, silver label and a red label for the slow gin. Yes,
yeah.
And we've kept it going, because actually, if you're making, the one thing about Plymouth is because the flavors are quite subtle, sometimes they can be overpowered by stronger other cocktail ingredients like sweet vermouth. So because it's the alcohol that holds the flavors, the more alcohol you have in a bottle, the more flavor. So therefore, the more ballsy it can be when it's fighting against things like sweet vermouth. So we always recommend the Navy Strength in things like Negronis.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because that will just help punch it through. Whereas I would never use Navy Strength for a martini. I'd always start at 41.2, because the thing about a martini is a dilution concept. Is that the gin, as you're stirring, this is why you should stir a martini, not shake it. As you're stirring it down, there comes a point where the alcohol flavors just tweak off, and you allow the aromas of the gin to come through.
Absolutely.
And that's the perfect point. And that's, generally speaking, high 20s. So you can't control that if you're shaking it. So that's why we start with. And if you're using 57%, it takes you longer to stir it down. So it's better to use 41.2.
That's fascinating.
They're exactly the same thing. Yeah. And then slow gin is something very peculiarly English. It goes back, we think, and this is the other thing, is the history of it has been properly lost. So this is trying to put together the odds and sods of what makes it work. So there was an act of parliament in the 1700s called the Enclosure Act, when they got rid of common land and they started making lots of fields, and they used the blackthorn tree stroke bush, if you like, to act as the hedgerows. And that's where the fruit is. So the slow berry is effectively a very, very awful plum. And then somebody discovered that if you soak it in gin and add a bucket load of sugar, you get a really beautiful little drink that's called slow gin. And again, we've been making it here now since about 25 years. There used to be a distillery. Hawker's Slow Gin used to be made in Plymouth. So we used to supply the gin for Hawker's Slow Gin, and that predates about 1800, something like that. Goes back into that sort of period of time. But it's also the heart of a few really great cocktails, like a Slow Gin Fizz. Is a really great summer drink, and actually it drinks really well neat. It's only 26%.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like putting it in your hip flask and going hunting, shooting, fishing, basically type of thing. So its uses are great, and it's actually also a really good port substitute. Just as an after dinner drink with cheese.
Yeah, I'm a fan, absolutely. And just as a side, one of the makers down here in Tasmania, they make a very fine one, and they use the leftover berries to make a quince paste. Berry paste for cheese board, and it's divine.
Yeah.
A quick question, back to Navy Strength. Well, back to storage, because I was talking earlier about barrel-aged gins, for example, and how that must have been one of the earliest forms of expression. You were saying before about the ABV level, so to speak. That's how they measured it. So gin would have been higher ABV.
Yeah.
No stainless steel back in the day. So am I right in thinking that most gin was also kept in barrels and would have get tainted at some point? Or?
Yeah. And actually the alcohol used at the time, because if you think about how you make alcohol, traditionally pot stills existed. You can only get up to about 85% when you're pot stilling alcohol to an ABV point of view. And that 15% makes a lot of difference. It's really interesting if you compare new make spirit, which becomes whiskey at 95.8, to GNA at 96.1. That little 1.5% removes so many impurities and cleans the alcohol up so much that the stuff they were actually making it with a couple of hundred years ago would have changed the gin. It would have just been and that's what I was saying earlier. The recipe's the same, but the making methodology really got refined in the last century. So now we're consistent.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sean. Because so I guess that's what keeps you coming full circle in our conversation about each day for you. It must be a different adventure, so to speak. You know,
Yep.
they're very, you've got this lineage or this heritage you're custodian of, as you rightly said, an old team there, and yet you're managing those variables on a day-to-day basis, and yet you still want to keep the gin relevant and contemporary to the market as well. You know, so there's interesting balance.
Yeah, I think that side of it is you can only do what you can do, and we have a recipe, and we're very fortunate that it's well loved around the world, and it has a very long history, and particularly in cocktail making and everything else like that. So, but we also recognise that people have different flavour profiles, and people come to gin at different times of life, and that moment when you walk into a bar and you're about to have a convivial moment, that really dictates what you're about to drink, and who your friends are with, and what mood you're in, and everything else. And I would argue that a lot of people don't know what drink they're going to have when they first walk into a bar. So actually that sort of early interaction with the bartender is really important to drift you in the direction you think you want to drink. But again, going full circle, it is the beauty of Plymouth. It does so many cocktails really, really well. So that moment when you're deciding to have a drink, and then Plymouth is a good go-to gin.
I think that's the perfect note to finish our conversation on for now. I think I shall let you get back to on with your day or World Gin Day. So again, thank you, Sean, everyone at Plymouth for making our chat conversation possible.
Thank you very much for your time. Good to talk.
Have a great day. Thanks again, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll let you jump out. Little cross button down there somewhere. They'll find it. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Head Master Distiller, Sean Harrison, Plymouth Gin, and all the team there behind the scenes making that conversation possible. Thank you very much. Amazing. 1793. So this is the old bottle. Oh, you can't get it. 1793. Can you imagine? So if you don't know it, please. Bit hard to get around in this. In a minute, we'll be talking to Eureka Distilling as we go around the world, and then we end back in New Zealand, and we're going to talk to the lovely people at Chemistry Gin as well. So Philip Crossley, we're going to have a chat just with Philip. I'll be right with you in just a minute. Thank you. I'm getting hungry and thirsty about you. What I'm trying to do, if Instagram allows me to do this, I'll just try and save this on my phone and upload it. I may even dive, if I can, up to my YouTube channel. So it's there for posterity of various conversations with the makers, and upload this as a post if I can. I've never done anything 3 hours long before, so we'll see how we go. So just doing a bit of a tour of gins around the world. I think we've covered most of them. I wanted to show you this one for my collection. You can't buy this, but again, this is a really lovely story, and it ties in with Plymouth Gin in many ways too, now I think of it. So it's called the Retiring Gin, Bert Shrug, a lovely gentleman, quite elderly now, and would make this basically very, very, very small batch operation, and these are all handmade labels, literally, and he was a pharmacist by profession over his career, and when he was caught, he told me the story, when he was courting his wife back in the day, he was trying to impress the father, I think it was, and they drink Plymouth gin tonics, and that's how they bonded, and so he got blessings to, marry his then to-be wife. And there's an early review on my website again of him, Bert Shrug, craft distiller. So he doesn't make any more, and so this is his retirement project, basically. So we talk every so often, and every time he'd make a special batch just for me, inspired by Plymouth Gin. So I'm really touched. So I hang on to this little bottle, and it just goes another story. There's many stories of how the spirit brings people together, like we are virtually today. So I'm going to introduce, so let's get the website up for Eureka. So we're going to Sydney, about 300 k's that way from my place about now. They were in Canberra recently, and we met Philip, who's the founder of Eureka. So Philip, I'm going to let you in, and then let's see if it's going to work. We've been so lucky so far. I'll do it this way. Here we go. And we'll learn all about Eureka Distilling, because I've actually got a few of their bottles here with me right now. So Philip, I'm just trying to get you in here. You should see an invite on your screen, Phil. It work?
Hope this works.
It does work. The magic of Instagram.
Hey.
Yvette?
Yep.
I can hear you. I can't see you, though. Ah,
See.
there's a screen. Okay.
Now let me
Turn around.
switch my camera.
There we go. Hello.
G'day.
Welcome to World Gin Day. Happy World Gin Day.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a great day up here in Sydney. Been at the Makers and Shakers market over at White Bay Cruise Terminal.
How'd it go?
Yeah, really good day. Some lovely people out and about, and yeah, good to introduce them to some quality gin while we're at it.
What better?
Yeah.
Thank you for making the time to have a chat after such a busy day, I'm sure.
Much appreciated being on here.
If you listen to some of the conversations, I mean, it's just, I come away all inspired. That's why I like doing what I do, you know what I mean? Like the people who actually make the stuff. I've got 2 empty bottles here. This is not a hint, by the way. You generously sent me down your whole range, and yeah, vodka, there's a rum and something else, but we're talking about your gins here, and the fact that the empty tells you something that didn't last very long. I mean, yeah. But let's start the top of people who don't know you and your company. Tell us all about Eureka.
Okay, I guess we've been going for, well, we've changed our name about a year ago. We were going for a few years before that. Yeah, change of players within the business. So yeah, it was time for a relaunch and a rename. So yeah, we're Eureka, you know, all about the art and science of distilling. So you know, there's a bit of a maths and science geek. You know,
your background?
I'm not.
Is that your background, Phil?
No, I'm an IT project manager.
Good.
Yeah, I've always been interested in science and maths and getting to the first principles of things and understanding how things work, you know, from the ground up. So yeah, I was a passionate brewer before I got into distilling. Got right into the technical aspects of brewing beer from scratch. Became a certified beer judge and helped organise, you know, state and national competitions on the amateur scale. Learned a lot about, you know, the process of making beer, and then I got to the point, well, how do I take this further? How do I get rid of that horrible water out of the beautiful alcohol I'm making? And so then, you know, taught myself to distill and went from there.
I think yours is not an uncommon story. I mean, at least in Australia, it's in so many ways a self-taught industry, isn't it? You know,
very much so.
Which is exciting in many ways. I don't see too many distillery business plans in my travels, but I just see a lot of creativity.
Yeah, well, unlike, you know, Scotland, where you got Heriot-Watt University and places like that, you know, we only just starting to actually get some distilling education happening here in Australia. So yeah, it tends to be people like myself that are self-taught, had that interest come up, you know, from the ground up, and then decided to go professional with it, you know.
So you're based in Sydney. Tell us about your location and where's, mate?
Yeah, we're in Marrickville, you know, in the heart of the inner west. It's probably the craft beer capital of, you know, Australia. There's a bucket load of breweries around there. Yeah, we're getting a few really cool distilleries, you know, popping up around the area as well. Paul Tom's has been there for quite some time. Yeah, but yeah, we've got ourselves. We've got Unexpected Guest, Esther.
Love Esther. They're really punchy, and that's pretty helpful too. I mean, Unexpected Guest, I did an earlier review when they still just had their combi. They hadn't actually, I don't think they had a place yet, or something like that.
No.
Yeah. That must be that must be helpful though, having that cluster.
Yeah, and there's a really good brew shop in the area as well. So, you know, it's good to have, you know, some like-minded people. If you need something, you know, you can always go and say, hey guys, can you help us with this or whatever. So yeah, you know, I refer to it as co-opetition.
Yeah, and it becomes a bit like what's another analogy I know of? It's like op shops. If you've got, you know, a whole bunch of op shops together, people think they're gonna. What tends to happen is they all make a day of it, and they, you know, bounce around. Yeah. You get your own distillery trail going one day. Who knows? Yeah,
no, we are. Let the cat out of the bag. We are working on it.
Oh, cool. There we are. Martini Whisperer scoop right here.
Yeah,
that's true.
Big time.
All right, let's talk gin then, Verve. Let's talk about gin. So you've got 2 in your range. The company you keep, and Eureka 2204, which is the postcode represent. That's in Marrickville. Take us through. Let's start with the company you keep one. I really enjoyed it. This sounded really classic to me, like a really, really classic London Dry vibe to it.
Yep. Yeah, look, we've got 4 gins in our company you keep range.
Yeah.
There's Sydney Dry being, a straight up London Dry. Plenty of citrus, as well as Tasmanian pepperberry to make things a bit interesting, because I love to play around with native botanicals where I can. But I wanted something that was nice, bright, vibrant, sort of summer's day, easy drinking, but still with plenty of flavour. So loaded it with, bucket load of juniper, because it's you got to have a good juniper backbone, don't you? Then supported that with a heap of citrus, and then Tasmanian pepperberry is such a beautiful spice on its own, on steak. I like mucking around with flavours, and I found that, that sort of citrus, you can get like lemon pepper that you have on your steak. And so, that was part of my thought process, going, well, can I combine that sort of peppery flavour with the citrus flavours? And so, that's where the Sydney Dry came from. Whereas the Signature, the one that you were just holding up, it's a bit more of a traditional, the red label, that's the one, a bit more of a traditional London Dry, using green cardamom as the primary botanical in there. But to give it that Australian twist, we put a little bit of finger lime in there, and to give it something, again, just something a bit more unusual, a tiny bit of vanilla into it. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but it's just adds a subtle sweetness to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had a martini which I really enjoyed, needless to say, and that's pretty cool. And what's the sort of still process you're using? Can you share anything about that? What your technology was?
Yeah, I'm a big single shot fan. I do everything vapor infusion. So, if I want big juniper, I chuck a bucket load more juniper into the gin basket.
Cool.
When I was looking around on the market, all of the gin baskets were only, sort of, this size. And I'm going, well, that's a bit of a waste, because I want to use a heap of botanicals. Like on the small scale, I had, like a 4-inch, diameter Carter head, and I was packing that out for, small batches. So when I started looking at how it could scale up, and going, I need a big gin basket, to fit all of this in. So I got a conical beer fermenter and modified that to become a gin basket. So, I can fit 50 litres of botanicals in the gin basket, so I can actually pack a heap of stuff in, a heap of flavour in. So, I'm all vapor infusion. I get it's a lighter, brighter spirit as well. But it means that, to get that bigger juniper backbone, I've got to chuck a heap more into it, because it's not as efficient, as a maceration, to extract those big heavy flavours out, like, juniper in particular. Great for the lighter flavours, but to get that bigger juniper note, you've got to chuck more in.
You've got to do what you've got to do, right? Let's talk about 2204, this one here.
Yeah, it's a straight up London Dry. Wanted to do something a little bit different, and so classic botanical, in the gin range or the gin world is cassia. So use that as the primary spice backbone in it. So it's the only one in our lineup we don't use any citrus in. It's a little bit. Some people find it a little bit confronting because they're so used to citrus forward gins. Whereas, with this guy with the cassia in it, it's got that lovely spicy warmth.
It's there. I mean, this bottle's, I've got about 10 ml still left in it. I definitely get that now you mention it. It's nice. It's really fragrant. It's not hot at all.
It's a very simple gin, but I've got a bit of orris in it as well. And I've met a lady who's a perfumer, and this is her favourite gin, and I've got talking to her, and her knowledge of botanicals and aromas and the chemistry behind it's amazing. And she was saying the reason that it really works, and I just came to this recipe by trial and error and going, I like this, I don't like that, and that sort of iterative process. But she's saying to me that a bit like when you look at the colour wheel and you've got colours on the opposite sides of the spectrum. She's going that the cassia and the orris that I use in that are in sort of opposite sides of the flavour and aroma spectrum, and so they balance each other out and support each other. And I'm like, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. So,
that is very interesting. Funny you should say that. I've done a bit of spirit judging, and also the 100-point scale, 20 points is your aromatics, right?
Yep.
And you're looking for spirit volatility and burn, but also are the botanicals balanced on the aromas, and do they then
Yeah.
follow through? And that's very interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. What's the philosophy between the company you keep range and your standard stock?
Um, the 2204 was, probably more of our cellar door release. It was like, the distiller's
Right.
special. If you want it, you got to come and see us. And because it is, the Marrickville Dry, it's our, home gin. So we're promoting it, to bars and the like within our local area
Cool.
as well, because the West, is a bit parochial. Yeah.
They're proud. They're proud of who they are, man. You should be. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, let's work with it and work with our local bars and restaurants and everything, and work
And you're
together.
getting a good response then in that sense, like people really embracing it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's a tough market out there, at the moment with the economy and all the
Yeah.
way it is, but that's happening for everyone.
In the same boat, that's for sure. But you've got to play to your
Yeah,
strengths. Let's have a chat about
absolutely.
sustainability. Like in terms of your production and approach to making your. Do you have sort of efforts around that space?
Yeah, look, we like to where we can, use natives and local product where we
Yeah.
can. But we've since found that we use like Albanian or Macedonian, Juniper, really high quality. Um, Coriander seed, we get from Morocco or Egypt. We find as where we get. So yeah, unfortunately, those guys have got some carbon miles on them. But other things, we try and source, locally, like finger lime. We get from a local grower in Grafton. For the apple pie, it's not gin, I know, but we source our apple juice from a family orchard in
This is
Victoria.
one here,
Um,
or apple pie. I haven't tried that yet. I'm going to
yeah.
save that for later. Thank you.
Yeah, we try and work with some local producers, so that we can support them, from small operations. We're not a massive enterprise or anything, so work together with local producers, try and utilize all recyclable products and encourage our customers to reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose.
Always.
Um,
Yeah. That's cool.
yeah.
That's cool. So now you're a gin maker. I guess you've got a day job like so many others. What is, since it's Australian Gin Day, we're all here for this. What excites you about gin, generally speaking? Like, you make a vodka,
Oh,
you make other products, but what about gin that really floats your boat?
well, I've always, and part of the thing that got me interested was I'm all about flavour, and what are the gin? There's just this bucket load, wide open palette
Mm-hmm.
of flavour that we can play with. You can make a gin, use the exact same botanicals as I do, but we'll end up with two totally different
Sure.
products because our process is different, our ratios are different, our approach to how we use those botanicals are different, and that's joyous that we can take the same base things and we can play with them in different ways and end up with different results, and both be really happy with what we've done, and I can appreciate what you've done and you can appreciate what I've done, and particularly here in Australia, but as well, we've got such a palette of native botanicals that hardly been tapped, that yeah, it's great to make some traditional styles, but we've got such an opportunity with all of our native botanicals to do so much interesting things.
Truly, digressing just a little bit, but you remind me, given you where you're based in the city there, that thing about there's a bar in Singapore. It may not be there anymore, but they use a lot of local foraging. So it's very Singaporean in terms of they use natural. They go forage around the city and find botanicals and stuff, mainly for cocktails and things like that. But they do make
Yeah,
up with a small batch of spirits and things like that. And if you think about rooftop honeybees and stuff like that, there must be opportunities for maybe one day you guys can create something that's got something that's distinctly Marrickville near somewhere, whatever that might be.
get a bun there, yeah. I was just thinking that.
Cool. And I'm mindful of time, and again, thanks for showing up today. Anything new down the pipeline people should know about? And I should also mention, friends, you want to find Eureka, look at eurekadistilling.com. for both information about them and their range, and you can buy their stuff online. So, anything you can share that's coming on besides the secret project you didn't mention before? We won't tell anybody. It's all right.
A bit more collaborative. Actually, next weekend we're about to release our Australian take on an American whiskey.
Cool.
So yeah, we're going to be at Good Food Show next weekend. So yeah, we're going to be releasing. We can't call it a bourbon because we're not in America. So yeah, that's going to be coming out. We're working on our limited release barrel aged gin again, so that it's only small batch, really limited.
And what barrel are you using for?
A French oak port cask that then had whiskey in it.
Okay, interesting. Excellent fun.
And we also use the Marrickville Dry, the 2204 that you like, with that lovely spicy backbone. So then when we add it, you get all of those port and whiskey notes come through with it, so it becomes really Christmas cake-like. So yeah.
And how long would you leave that in for, more or less?
Because it's only small barrel, we typically do that about 3 months.
That's cool.
Yeah, we've got a few other big shows coming up. Like we're going to be doing the Melbourne Royal. We're waiting to hear back if we're into Eureka up in Brisbane. So yeah, we want to get out and showcase what we've got to people of Australia.
Well, more power to you, man. And again, thanks for coming along today. And great to meet you finally.
Fantastic.
And then thanks for your lovely spirits.
No, glad you're enjoying them.
You let you go. Enjoy the rest of your night, mate.
Thank you. You too. Been lovely.
Thanks, brother.
Take care. See ya. Bye now.
Super. That's Eureka, friends. If you just joined us, welcome to Australian Gin Day Live. I've been going for a few hours now. We've met people from New Zealand, all around Australia, UK, and we're about to have our last guest heading back to Aotearoa, New Zealand, in a few minutes. I'm just going to move the camera, take my notes. But before I do that, I wanted to introduce just another gin to you, and that's kind of started my Australian gin journey a million years ago. This one here, back to front, Moore's Vintage Dry Gin. And this was the first Australian gin I ever had, and don't ask me how long ago that was. Because once upon a time, there was only 4, maybe, we're talking not too long ago actually, to be honest, gin makers out there in Australia anyway. And this has Juniper, of course, we've been talking about Juniper all day, coriander, angelica, wild lime, cinnamon myrtle, macadamia, and Illawarra plum. So Dr. Philip Moore, the distillery, there's no one called Distillery Botanica, is the other brand name for that, is a true genius and pioneer. And so he's basically a botanist. So his gins are botanical expressions, self-taught. And so, yeah, shout out to Philip Moore. Dr. Philip Moore, for your work. So we're going to take this. We're going to take this. And we'll head back to the lounge. And it's Cosmo being keen. He's been such a good boy. Not interested in the shoot and the filming. So what we're going to do now, and Chemistry Gin, are you there? And Langham, lovely to see you. Thanks for tuning in. You may not be aware, I used to work at that fine hotel before it was the Langham. Magnificent hotel in Sydney. Pet friendly too. And I worked there when I was part of the Orient Express chain. I was a sister maitre d' in the fine dining restaurant. I'm going to say 1993. So that was a long time ago. And so I'll do that. That's a better look. Thank you, friends. Okay, chemistry, stand by. Yes, so we've had a good fun tonight. So this has been our last conversation of the night, and then I'm going to have a drink. I think I deserve one, don't you think? Going for afternoon. It's been such fun, though. I hope you enjoyed our conversations. And again, I'll do my best to save these and post these. So wish me luck on that. Let me just put this up. I'm very excited about this conversation. So our friends at Chemistry Gin here, we're going to be in the call when the according to the planes. They're all going to come to Australia, to Melbourne, and then planes happened, and then by happy coincidence, they've been able to be part of it. So I'm just going to pull your website up, Chemistry Gin, just while we're getting. If you're ready, here we go. That's beautiful. That's what we want. Okay, here we go. think we're good. All right. Ready? Born ready. Yes. Hello.
Hello,
Kia.
Philip. How lovely to see you.
You
Thank
too.
you for inviting us to join you tonight.
My pleasure.
Woo!
Kia ora. And I'm
Kia
glad
ora.
the plane. I'm glad you. Not glad your plane broke. Whatever happened. That's a bit shame. So you're stuck in Wellington? Is that what happened?
Stuck in Wellington, yes. Flight QF172, Wellington to Melbourne this afternoon was cancelled. So we've all been put up for the night, and we're getting our flights tomorrow. So it's all good. Don't mind at all.
Looking forward to that happened to us on the way back from the Cook Islands in February, March. We were going through Auckland. We had the last flight out, and it got later and later and later until such time as the plane wasn't going anywhere, and they found us all that stuff. So that's okay. Well, I'm glad. This is good synchronicity. So we've had some good chats this afternoon.
Oh my goodness, I am just astounded. I have learned so much this afternoon, Philip. Thank you. It's been an absolute education.
For me too. Thank you. I appreciate that. I did something not dissimilar during lockdown, good old COVID and stuff like that. And but this is the most ambitious program I've put together. I knew we had Italy. I said I knew we had Italy, but that was a bit tricky. So Marie, let's start at the beginning. You're one of two parts.
I'm one of two. I am the comedian in The Chemist and the Comedian. So I'm Laura, and I'm a comedian. And I'm one of two co-founders of Chemistry Gin. And my co-founder is also my partner in life, and that is my wife, Marie. And Marie is a chemical pathologist with a great love of flavor. She's a fantastic, amateur chef. And her precision in cooking is what qualified her to teach the macaron class at the Wellington Community Education here, the adult education, because of course macaron are science. It's where food and science meet. That's a macaron, much like distilling.
Mm-hmm.
We came to distilling as foodies.
Right.
And so that love of flavor is what informed the recipe, which all credit to my wife, Marie. It's her recipe. And I heard one of your previous guests, was it the man from Lord Howe Island?
Yep.
He got it in 3. We didn't change our recipe with the first batch of ingredients. No. We changed the proportions very slightly, but we did not change any of the ingredients. 8 botanicals, and it has never changed, and it has stood us in good stead since we launched in 2022.
That's amazing. And I'm on your site, and friends, just go to chemistrygin.com for more information. And here, and I can say this, so 95 out of 100 for a gold medal, International Wine and Spirits Competition, which I think is probably the most prestigious competition out there. Gold medal at the World Gin Award in 2024, and others besides. Not to mention your stunning bottle, which we could talk about, I guess, too. So, did you just decide one day, let's make a gin, or how that,
Well, there's a couple of different things. We'd been living in the Highlands of Scotland, and we were there for the gin boom in the 2010s. And it was such an exciting time, and a guy that we knew was starting a distillery, and a GP that Marie worked with. She and her husband were starting Loch Ness Gin, and I had met Martin and Claire Murray from Rock Rose Gin at a Scottish business mentors thing. I was a mentor in the Scottish business mentors thing, and so were they. I met them at one of these mentor get-together events, and so we just kept coming into contact with gin. And I wouldn't say, we're neither of us big drinkers, but we tried Isle of Harris gin and just loved it.
Yeah.
And well, the thing about Isle of Harris gin is it's got they say sugar kelp, it's got seaweed in it, and it gives it that lovely mouthfeel, that umami. It sound like a foodie, don't I? Anyway, but that was it. And so we tried it. We liked it. We ordered a case of it. And on their website, they recommended a certain tonic, Walter Gregor tonic. So we got a case of the tonic to go with the case of gin and just thought that this stuff's wonderful, you know, and really enjoyed it. And that was, I don't know, I think that was 2015. I think we just bought our house in Scotland, 2015. And that was really our introduction to gin, because I think I had gin on a plane when I was maybe 20, Bombay Sapphire and Schweppes, and it was just not my thing. And I didn't drink it again for 20 years, probably. So that, you know, it just, it just didn't do it for me. And so fortunately, all of these things came together, this confluence of things. So we had gin around us in Scotland. And then we emigrated to New Zealand in 2019. And when we got here, Marie said, I really want to make something. I want to make something. Maybe I'll make cheese. And I said, oh, too many food safety regulations. No, you're not making cheese. You know, that's government regulation and inspections. I mean, not that distilling isn't. And she said, well, what about tonic, you know? I wonder if they've got any nice tonic in New Zealand. And I said, you know, for the size of the bottle, I said, why didn't we just make gin? And that was it. She went off and researched the recipe. Her mother was a great cook and used Szechuan peppercorns. You put them in the mortar and pestle, grind them up, and put them on fish, and put them on salmon, right?
Yep.
So Marie always loved Szechuan peppercorns. She thought, that's it. If I'm making gin, it's going to have Szechuan peppercorns. And she looked at the flavor wheel, and opposite that flavor was sage. So we've got Szechuan peppercorns, we've got sage, and we've got New Zealand kelp, seaweed. So those are three. Those are sort of our hero botanicals after Juniper. And then there's 4 other sort of regular ones. And that's it, 8 botanicals.
Look, it is, and for those who haven't tried it, it is really, really, really gorgeous. And again, thanks for that bottle you sent me. I did appreciate that very much, as you know. And it's funny you should say about Scotland. You know, I spent some time at Albarn, by the way, in my restaurant days, and toured around there for a bit. But at the start of this event, I was talking about some of the evolution of gins. You know, from, as you're saying, the Gordons and the classic brands back in the day too. It was really Hendrix who kind of broke the mold. You know, the Scottish gin, right? And it came out of nowhere. It just lit a fire
on gin. Absolutely.
And it showed gin can be this other thing, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a particular Scottish genius, clearly, and you guys have got it. I don't know what's in the... There's obviously something in the water out there. It's true. It's true. So let's bring this back to you, Gin. I did have some questions here. I've lost my train of thought now. Talk about the variables then, about the production. Let's get a bit geeky now. Because what we've discovered along the way in these conversations, as you would have heard from the people, is batch variation is fine and one thing, but how do you even it out when you're in your production process, that when someone buys a bottle one month and comes back again, it's not completely different? You know, how do you manage that?
Well, you know, like other amongst your guests, we use a contract distiller. And our recipe was developed with the first person we talked to about gin was Ben Leggett at Roots in Blenheim Elemental Distillers. And he is a contract distiller, and he helped us scale our recipe. So the recipe is really quite precise. And it's just about, you know, enough the same. If the ingredients are all gotten at the same time, hopefully they're going to be consistent over the batches. Like one of your previous guests, we make 400 bottles at a time. So it's quite small. You know, it's really a kind of a boutique distillery process through our contract distiller. And it saved us. You know, we wanted to make gin, but we didn't want to learn how to distill, to have that be a hurdle. We didn't want to have to build a distillery. We didn't want to have to do all of those things that were not our skill set. So our skill set was flavor.
Right.
And that's where it went in. And the other thing was the sustainability side. We're the first New Zealand spirit in 100% recycled glass. We've got a glass stopper from Vinilok. We're now doing them in wine bottles. But the idea was that before we did anything, we wanted to find the most sort of low energy input bottle we could find. And so rather than use new glass,
Yes.
we found in Spain, Estal, who are quite famous now for their wild glass bottles, we found this gorgeous Pharma bottle. And that was the whole idea. That was our starting point, was this bottle. And the designers had to work with this bottle because, frankly, nobody in New Zealand would make a bottle for us. They wouldn't even return our phone calls. Really? So, unfortunately, I think we were ahead of the curve. I think they're coming around to it now. And one of our colleagues, Dunedin Craft Distillers, are using a 70% recycled glass bottle now, which is wonderful. It's great to see.
That's an interesting component. Thanks for that, because when I talked to some distillers here, for example, just right over here, and what they're trying to do is lighten the bottle in some way too, but you can only go so far with that when it becomes, not a viable package solution,
It has to be robust, but glass is quite robust. And as techniques improve, the science of it also, it starts to work on your side, so you can make it lighter and without losing too much strength.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. But yeah, again, stepping outside your brand just for a minute, because I've noticed you've got this really not talking about Ultimate Guide to New Zealand Gin on your website too, and unfortunately I'm missing out on the Spirit Awards this year, but they found someone more fabulous, but that's okay. I want to get over there as soon as I can, because I've been saying at the top of the conversation when I was talking to Island Gin, that across the board it seems to me, all the New Zealand gins I've had, not saying it because I'm talking to you, is that the base standard of calibre of quality of spirit seems to be good, like good if not excellent, and the handling of botanicals seems to be very sophisticated, can I put it that way, and the way they're presented and balanced. I've never come across New Zealand gin. I've had quite a few now, and I've gone, what the heck's that, right? What's that about?
I think that there's a love of place that comes through in New Zealand, and there's a connection to the land. And I think people who are making gin are curious about what's around them and what's available that they can use. Everybody wants their gin to be a little bit different, so you've got the Kawa Kawa, the Horopito, the Manuka honey, all of these kind of, they're from the land, and people are getting the things that are around them. Roots, they use the gorse flowers that grow around them and harvest those. I mean, it's just wonderful. But I think people around the world are doing this, maybe because the things in New Zealand are quite unique, they stand out. But I have to say, one of the keys in our recipe when we created it was that we had to be able to make it anywhere in the world.
Oh.
We wanted ingredients that didn't only get picked from the canopy of the Amazon rainforest on a full moon in July.
Right, of course.
So there was the recipe was developed with an eye to resilience and robustness. In fact, there was a kind of lemon that we wanted to use, a native New Zealand lemon called a lemonade, which is a little sweet lemon. And we had never come across them before. We had them, our neighbor had a tree, so that's how we tasted them. We thought, oh, these are great. And then talking to the distiller, you find out there was a window of about 3 or 4 weeks where you can get them. And then you're snookered, any other time of the year, you're not going to be able to get them. So we really planned for that kind of a fail-safe recipe. And because we're from different corners of the globe, I'm Canadian, my co-founder's South African, We were living in New Zealand. We thought, well, this is great. We've got this plan for the gin, but what if we move? We want a gin that's portable, not one that relies on Horapito
love it.
flowers. So there was that kind of thinking that went into it as well. So unlike most New Zealand distillers, we haven't got any unusual native botanicals in ours. We've just got the New Zealand seaweed.
That's so clever. That's so clever. I love that. That makes perfect sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Philip.
Because how to put this? You can use the word sustainability in all sorts of different ways, and one of them is business sustainability, right? And so by putting that architecture in place, can I put it that way, that you can do exactly that. You're not boxed into, as you say, like I know a whole bunch of distillers, and they might want a certain native pepperberry, but that's only that mountain at that time, which is great when you can get it. When you can't, that's not so great.
Well, you mentioned Philip Moore just before we came on air, Distillery Botanica. And when we were thinking about gin, we actually heard a podcast with him.
Right.
I think it was on Drinks Adventures. And he talked about all of the different botanicals that people could put in. And he said, unfortunately, the Australian ones, they're New World botanicals. And some of them can be quite harsh. And he used the joke about if you want to put in an Australian botanical, he says you whisper its name into the still.
Oh, look, he is a legend, and people really need to know his work.
I'll never forget hearing him say, "Bunga nuts."
But for friends listening, I come from a restaurant background, as I mentioned, and one restaurant we had was all Australian produce, and used one of the first bush tucker ingredients like quandongs and lily pillies and like kangaroo and the rest of it. And the chefs really struggled because they just too much of it, right? Because it's treated like any other ingredient, And the same carries on to native botanicals. And frankly, since we're on the record, I can't stand them at all. And I just see it all the time, or not well handled, shall we put that. It just dominates. It's just such a big
what
thing,
he
right?
said was because they were New World botanicals, they hadn't been hybridized over 10,000 years, the way the European botanicals had, where they had been selected for flavor repeatedly. And so the flavors hadn't mellowed and been engineered essentially through plantsmen and their interventions.
That's fascinating. I've got to find that podcast. Is that James Atkinson?
It is.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. That makes perfect sense when you think about that. Well, it goes to show gin is more than just a gin, is it not? Gin is about community, it's about environment, it's about science, it's about tech, it's about inspiration.
It's about women. It's absolutely about women too. Let's not forget women. Leslie Gracie. She was a chemist. She is a chemist. Her love of flavor came from working in a pharmaceutical company, trying to make medicines more palatable. That's how the Hendrix flavor came to her through a real talent and a need, a necessity in her early career.
Yes, that's a really great point, and we owe a lot to her and women in distilling in general. And I think one final question for you, then I'm going to make myself a drink. I've earned it. Just on that, because there's an organisation here, Women Australian Distilling, for example. There's one in America now. I think that popped up last year, and so forth. And by virtue of the nature of the industry, your own business, right? So it's not as if you've got a workplace culture. Hospitality is a different story, of course, and what goes on. I don't want to generalise at all, but picking up on your theme of what women bring, I'm generalising vastly, but pick me up, please. That lens that they bring, women as makers, women as chemists, women as engineers, women as whilst I'll meet male distillers who, I'm going to generalise again vastly, get in trouble for it. Technical processes, what kind of, I'm going left brain, right brain, but I'm not making a mess of this. But just what I'm trying to get at here, is there something they bring to the party? Should I put it that way?
Well, historically, And I thank Sarah Miller for this education on my part. Historically, women were the distillers in the family. They made medicines for their family. They made beer before water was potable. And so they were like the caregivers and, the ones doing all of that. And it was only, I think, 16th, 17th century with the Gin Act that women were effectively marginalized from distilling. It was professionalized. It went from being a domestic art to being a mercantile activity. And I think that really, women were then pushed to the periphery. After the Gin Act came in, women who'd been making gin at home as their own source of income, they were essentially prohibited from it. And although they were only 20% of the gin makers, they were 70% of the prosecutions under the Gin Act. So it really looked like it was a punitive way of getting women the hell out of gin. So for those of us who are in it now, we feel like we're taking one for the team, flying the flag.
Oh, I love it. That's a perfect note to finish on. Thank you. I'm so glad you could stick around for our chat.
Well, just one thing before we go.
Yes.
$2 from every one of these gorgeous bottles we sell goes to support women in science. Fantastic. Hence the name chemistry. And we're just about to launch our first call for women applicants to our bursary scheme. So we're about to give away our first award. So we're going to put out a call. It's for women in New Zealand this year, women in chemistry. So that's very exciting for us. Speaking of women, so I just wanted to let you know about that.
That's brilliant. In my other life, I've done a lot of work with women in IT and STEM in space here. And so I applaud. So chemistrygin.com, friends. Follow our friends here on Instagram to stay in the loop. Great to see you, and thanks again.
Pleasure. Thank you, and congratulations on your World Gin Day festivities. It's been fabulous. Well done, you, Philip.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Safe travels. Enjoy Australia.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that, friends, is a wrap. What fun. Oh, absolute fun. 3.5 hours of gin goodness, Australian Gin Day. So thank you for tuning in and sticking around. I am going to try and save this, upload it, and the rest. Wish me luck with that. I've never done a 3.5 hour live update on Instagram. So worst comes to worst, I should be able to cut and dice it and add it to my YouTube channel. So if you've missed all the other amazing conversations, we've had an absolute ball. We have talked to Island Gin, again, known as New Zealand distiller, Little Juniper out of South Australia, North of Eden, south coast of New South Wales, Lord Howe Island, there's a story, the venerable Plymouth Gin, United Kingdom, Eureka distilling from inner city, and just now Chemistry Gin, also from New Zealand. So I deserve a drink. I'm starving. It's been a ball. So again, thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.